F28. My boyfriend, M33, hates his Christmas present and is mad. Please, can you advise? TLDR, my boyfriend feels disrespected by my parents' choice of gift for him. I feel bad for my parents. He is mad. Please advise, what do I do? My F28 boyfriend, M33, hates his Christmas gift. How do I navigate this? I, 28F, shared my first Christmas with my boyfriend, 33M, this year. We both got each other gifts that we love. My family wanted to get my boyfriend something as he would be spending Christmas with us and not his own family this year. My mom asked what he likes and I explained a few of his favorite things: American football. They got him a jersey for his birthday, nice whiskeys, chocolates, etc. My dad chose his gift and opted for a really nice bottle of whiskey that wasn't cheap alongside a gift for the both of us. I am spoilt and still got my usual Santa gifts from my family also. My boyfriend opened his gifts and was furious, stating that he feels disrespected and wants gifts that define his worth. I feel so bad. I feel like my family really wanted him to like it and meant no offense by it. He went on to state, as for my birthday, I only got a football jersey from them. I said I feel bad for my family, and now he is mad at me, saying I should feel worse for him as he has been unappreciated. Please help me navigate this scenario. Edit. He feels his family have given me more in the sense of monetary value when we have been to visit them. He says he is embarrassed to tell his parents what my parents have gifted to him. Life is a mess. Why do I now feel an urge to distance myself from rich friends? We're all 26F. Just want to preface this by saying I know this thought is irrational, but I want to make some sense of it. My friends are great people. We met at school, and since then they've started their careers and can now afford to buy their own houses and go on expensive vacations and generally live quite luxurious lives. I was very much on track to do the same until a severe mental health issue upended everything after graduating. Right now I have no career and may be homeless soon. When we meet up we have fun, but it also reminds me that we are worlds apart. It's like we all started on the same level. I'm pretty sure I was always the poorest, but the difference wasn't as stark in school. And now they are people I don't really recognize. I'm endlessly proud of them, but the things they discuss just don't relate to my life in any way, shape, or form. And honestly, the more I hear about it, the more it sends me into despair when I then reflect on how dire my current life situation is. They like to go to fancy restaurants, and I've told them I can't really afford to do that regularly. They'll listen, but then after a while it's like they'll forget again, and I feel silly bringing it up. Ever since this news about potential homelessness, I've been feeling really low. Like just wondering how things managed to get worse than they already were. Never felt so distant from my friends and their reality. I also don't have any broke friends at all, so I feel very much alone in that sense. I have this intense urge to really focus on sorting this mess out, find a proper job, etc., and just not see them for a while. Realistically, I know I probably will still see them, and deep down, of course, I want to. They're my friends. And it also wouldn't be at all fair on them because this is very much a me problem. But why do I feel like I just can't handle being around them right now? Does it make me a bad person? I'm 25F, scared I'm making the wrong decision staying with my 25M boyfriend of 6 years high, so I would just like some outsider's perspective on my relationship and if it's a waste of time. I don't know whether I'm just being too overly sensitive or he's not being a good boyfriend. So, for the first year of us dating, everything was good, I guess. I kind of had red flags, if you will, but nothing too serious. But then things started to become harder to ignore. 1. At first, I loved his nonchalant personality. I'm an anxious person and get overwhelmed quite easily, so I felt it'd be good for me. This was until I realized that for the first year of our relationship, I basically did everything. I initiated whenever our next date would be, planned the dates and paid for them. When I noticed this pattern, I brought it up to him and his response was, I'm just not good at planning things. And that when he gets a new good-paying job, he'll make more of an effort. I just bit my tongue and let it be and hoped things would change in the future. This was until I realized that he was the one planning his friends' outings. And whenever he did have a free day, it was never his first thought to plan a day with me. It was to go do things with his friends. I asked him multiple times when we can go away, just the two of us, and he always said no BC money, and he didn't like the places I was saying we should go. Not even a week after saying no to visiting London for a weekend, he's planning a trip for almost a week to go to London with his pals, and not for a future holiday, but for within the same month. I think this would be the first example of him showing me that he doesn't really care for me. 2. I started noticing that his explore page was filled with a lot of women. He didn't notice I was watching him on his phone one time, and I seen him click on a picture of a woman in revealing clothing, and it broke me a little bit, but I never brought it up. I wanted to be the chill GF so bad. Then his feed was full of the meme accounts that would basically promote adult content women for money, and I had enough, so I said that it was making me uncomfortable. TBH, I can't remember his response to this was. What I do remember is the fact that he didn't do anything about it and still kept following the accounts that made me uncomfortable, until I eventually had to unfollow them on his account myself. And for context, I should say that I am not the jealous GF type. I was never like this at the start, and I never thought I would be the type to go on my man's phone, but it brought something out in me I didn't like. 3. Obviously, when you first get into a relationship, porn is a given. I didn't mind it at the start, but eventually we both had a discussion about it, and we both decided that it would be best for our relationship if we didn't use it. He had a problem with finishing. This was a problem with another person he's had sex with too, so it wasn't just me, but he just couldn't come. I decided porn was a problem because he has admitted to me that even on the days he would know I would be coming over, he would come to porn. This made me feel so disgusting in my own body, so ugly and unsexy. So having an adult conversation about it, we took porn out of the equation. Until I found him jerking it in the room next door to porn. I was heartbroken, and if I was a strong enough person, I would have left right there on the spot. This was about 3 to 4 years ago. This one is such a long and confusing one that I'll try and keep small and try not to get too much into the drama. Basically, he has a sister and 3 brothers. One of the brothers had a GF at the time, and this pair would basically straight up blank me anytime I tried to have any type of convo with them. And I'm talking like straight up looking at me dead in the eyes and turning to have a convo with someone else, or basically just leaving the room when I would be in there. And to this day, I still don't fully understand the situation. I have only ever tried with these people. It was so frustrating. There's so much of this story I'm not getting into, so sorry if it doesn't make sense. My partner gave me no help, never confronted them, and never made me feel validated when it came to talking about what they did. Always chalked it up to be, oh, it's just them. That's what they're like, don't get offended. But I see them talking so freely in the room with other people, it made me feel so isolated. My partner made me feel so lonely during this time because he would always try with his brother's GF, even going out of the way for her, and it just felt like his family would never do the same for me. 5. Whenever we argue, I hate it so much. I've never argued with someone like him. It's so bizarre. It's someone I don't even recognize. He goes straight for the jugular. There'll be insults with a pinch of making me feel crazy for not remembering things the way he did. I cannot open up to this man about my feelings at all. If I cry in front of him, it disgusts him. He has quite literally gone to sleep whilst I was crying, laughing at YouTube videos whilst we try to talk things out, argue, and called me pathetic whilst I'm having a panic attack. This section kind of fucks me up the most, I think, because with everyone else, like his friends and family, I know for a fact he would not treat them like that. But yet with me, he seems to never want to fix things without throwing all the hateful insults at me first. I feel I can never open up about my mental health because he somehow uses it against me every time in arguments. 6. After all I've gone through with him and things in between, my mental health is suffering, currently on the waiting list for therapy and meds for my panic attacks. I feel like always had anxiety issues, so I know it's not fully stemmed from him, but I can't help but notice how much of a decline I've had since dating him. I've developed depression bad, to the point where I don't want to disclose how bad it is, and basically we have a home together now. My illness is sucking everything out of me. Everything I used to love seems so dull ATM, and I'm in the process of getting the help I need, but obviously it's still so tough during the in-between. For the past month I've found it so hard to be able to even so basic chores, and I said that I'm going to ask my dad if he could come over and help me clean the household chores that I've let go, so it's not as much of a strain on my BF. My BF ended up basically flipping out, saying, "How bad of a look would it be to your father if my BF, couldn't look after my BF own home?" And just for context, there was basically a month's worth of chores to be done, which are quite visible. I thought maybe because he could see how bad I was getting, my partner would just take initiative and do it, but he didn't, so that's why I needed the help. He said I should have told him what needs to be done, and that it was insulting to him that I would ask my dad. This one is a tough one because I know for a fact that if it was the other way around and he was the one going through physical or mental illness, then I would take on the household without him even needing to ask. During this, he proceeded to tell me I needed to get a grip, and again that I was pathetic. There's so many things with this guy that I can't even remember. I do feel as though after that 1-year mark I've been in a constant state of brain fog. I do love him, obviously there are good times because I've been with him this long. He is a great person when he wants to be, everyone I know tells me how much of a good person he is, and he's the type to drop everything to help a person out. I've seen it for Missile when it comes to other people and him, but with me, I just don't feel he can be a good enough boyfriend for me to stay. Sorry if none of this makes sense. It's currently 3:37 a.m. and I feel like I've just been spiraling every night for the past 5 years. Am I making the wrong choice staying with a guy like this? Or am I being too hopeful that he'll change? Does my husband hate me? TLDR. My husband recently told me he didn't want to have any more kids and maybe we should divorce because of it. Me and my husband, 30, have been together for 8 years and married for 2. We have a 1-year-old and he recently told me that he doesn't want to have any more kids and he would understand if I want to leave since my dream was to always have 2 to 3 kids. I told him I wouldn't break up my family for a hypothetical child if our relationship is solid and we can provide a loving, healthy home for our son. The fact that he would jump to this conclusion concerned me and I've been upset by it, and it's brought up a few more issues in our marriage. My main question is, I've heard that after having a baby you and your partner grow apart and sometimes it can take up to 2 years to get back to a new normal, but I just can't stop feeling heartbroken around him and sensitive. Some of the other issues this has brought up are 1. During my pregnancy I was very sick and in the hospital a few times. I couldn't eat anything, in a lot of pain and lost about 50 pounds. I wasn't in the mood a lot to be intimate. Then when the baby came, as I think lots of new moms, it was hard for me to get intimate as well. I still have a low sex drive a year later, but he says he feels rejected. I assure him I don't reject him and it's nothing to do with him, and I truly want to have sex, but the thought of it when it comes time to it feels so daunting. 2. During my year maternity leave, I battled some PPD and honestly had some pretty dark moments. I am not meant to be a stay-at-home mom, so it was really hard for me to be at home while he got to go to work. I love work and I think I became jealous of that, but then had incredible mom guilt that I didn't naturally want to stay at home with the baby. Looking back, I think there were tons of good moments while I was on my mat leave, but there are some weeks here or there that I maybe wasn't a peach to be around. 3. He has this group of friends from work that he has become really close with, and I can't help but get the ick whenever he hangs out with them to talks about them. They go for lunch once a week, drinks once a week, and hang out till 3 a.m. every few months on a weekend, plus texts in their chat constantly. I think my biggest issue is that there is a woman in the group he's grown particular close with. He has lunch with her every day, texts her all the time, they drive to work occasionally together, and I think I'm jealous of their relationship. 4. A big fight we keep having is about travel. We were supposed to go on 3 trips while I was on leave, but they all got canceled for various reasons. Then he had to go on a work trip, and he decided to go to the trip a day early and come home a day late so he could literally hang out and do nothing with the aforementioned work friends. I was hurt and jealous that I was going through such a hard time and he wouldn't think to ask me if I would want to come. At his work, spouses can pretty easily come before or after a work trip. When I confronted him about it, he told me he'd plan a trip for us before I went back to work, and I've been back for 2 months now and nothing. He keeps encouraging me to go on a trip without the baby with my mom, but I told him I want to go with him and he doesn't seem interested. 5. He tells me I don't appreciate him and what he does for the family. During my maternity leave, I asked him if he could help around the house more without me asking. I explained to him the mental load and that I needed help for my own sanity. Finally, he started, and actually has continued to do chores around the house that are now part of his routine. However, apparently, I don't even remember this. A few months ago, we were arguing about how I didn't appreciate him, and I said, "Am I supposed to say thank you every time you clean a dish? Welcome to being a fucking adult," and that hurt him. He brought this up while we were talking about my being hurt about the jumping to divorce thing, and he cannot tell me how I can show my appreciation more. So I think he's just picking at straws. All in all, this sounds bad when I type it and that there isn't a lot of good in our relationship, but there truly is. We have had wonderful times together and have always been so strong. So now that I can feel him pulling away or treating me differently, I am so heartbroken about. I want our relationship to work so bad. I love him and our family, and I never thought this would be our issue. I am really hoping this is just a postpartum bump, but it feels like a lot. I, 23F, have found out my husband, 23M, has been going through my more very regularly while I sleep, 1-year relationship. As you have read, it has come to my attention based off basic deduction, i.e., I am highly aware of what tabs are open, what apps are open, where I left off before going to bed. I am a very organized person, that my husband goes through my phone very often. Initially, when we got together, he made it clear that we should be able to trust each other enough to not have to do that. Fine by me. I have no issue with him going through my phone. If it makes you feel better, do it. But the issue is, in the first couple months, I believed he was going through my phone maybe once every other month. As of Christmas Eve, I have figured out he geeks through it multiple times a month, and this behavior has increased. I don't know if he was always checking my phone this often, but what I do know is that he has looked very often this month alone. There is nothing to see on there. I do have things on there that are private, like notes to myself or me trying to Google things to understand myself better, which is embarrassing but again not a crime. He only checks my phone while I'm sleeping and has not told me except for the times where he believes he has found incriminating information. Last time was his friend texting me about his GF, which is also my sister, by the way. He told me to block him and never talk to him again. This time it was something else. He'll keep it short for the sake of the length of this, but he previous told me to make friends to play video games with, since he doesn't want to play with me, and so I got friend making app. He said it's a dating app where it is not a dating app and isn't marketed that way and other details, but he got upset because he saw men messaging me. I said thank you to a few who were complimenting my looks, but the convos died immediately after. In my bio, I had stated I'm only interested in a gaming friend, nothing more. He now believes I'm a cheater and a liar. This last incident happened a day ago, and he's been threatening to kick me to the curb since. The issue is I want to understand why he feels the need to go through it so often and in secret. Again, I have no issue with it, but it makes me feel like something is going on. Another relevant fact. I spoke with his sister on this, and she asked if Eve ever gone through his, which I've stated no. I feel no need really. She said, while he is my brother and I don't know what kind of guy he is like that. In my experience, if they are doing this, they have something to hide. My 28M girlfriend, 29F, never wants to do anything together anymore. What do I do? I've 28M been dating my GF, 29F, for about 3.5 years now. Like many relationships, everything was all great at the start. We did a bunch of activities together, never got into any arguments, and always enjoyed each other's company. Over time, the spark just slowly decayed. We both got more stressed at work, communication started to suffer, sex life started to severely suffer, and so on. Fast forward to today. She simply doesn't want to do anything anymore. We used to go out every weekend to a new restaurant or try a new activity. Now it's like pulling teeth getting her to agree to do something with me. I literally just want to spend time with her. She refuses to do anything but sit at home and game with her or watch a movie in bed. I've tried so hard to push her to get out of the house and go on real dates together again, but my efforts seem to fall on deaf ears. Today was my final straw. I suggested a few activities to do today, and she wanted to go to a $400 restaurant. I said no, let's do something different, and all of a sudden her mind changed and she has no interest in doing anything. Going to nice restaurants, $100 to $200, was something we enjoyed doing, but sometimes I just want to do something simple, go on a walk, go stroll through some stores downtown, go to a museum, things like that. And for whatever reason, it just won't happen. I got really fed up that she was only willing to go to a $400 dinner for our date night, considering the status of our relationship. I am trying hard to get us to simply just hang out outside the apartment, and it's like she's actively fighting against me. Don't know what to do anymore. I'm so tired. To give you some context, she suffers from severe anxiety. I've tried to help her as much as I can, but it's getting worse and it's severely affecting our relationship. She seemingly gets more debilitating and my patience seems to grow more thin. I'm truly at a loss for what to do. I don't want this relationship to end, but it's taking a big toll on myself and I'm trying everything I can to fix it. And yes, I've tried to communicate all of these thoughts exactly. Nothing seems to come out of it. Other than, yes, I understand you, I'm sorry, and nothing changes. My 29M girlfriend, 27F, went home Boxing Day because she was ill, then told me she was going out with friends TLDR. Girlfriend decided she was too unwell to be with me, but not unwell enough to dance with her friends, so my girlfriend of 2 years spent Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, our first time celebrating together, at my home while she was dealing with a rough period. She suffers from PMDD, so her periods can be bad. I felt like despite that I at least had a lovely time hosting, opening presents together, looking after and cooking for her, and it seemed like she was having a nice time too despite the period discomfort. The plan was we also spend Boxing Day together and then go to hers together the next day. 3 a.m. on Boxing Day, I wake up to her crying her eyes out. I begin consoling her and she decides to go be in the spare room because she thinks she's disturbing me. I got dressed and went into the other room to continue consoling her, and she told me she would come back in soon, so I went back into the other room and let her try and manage because clearly I couldn't help. She didn't come back in until around 9 a.m. where she tells me she's going to get picked up at midday to go home. I accept this despite how the change of plans upset me, and she went home. A few hours later she texts me asking if I was mad, to which I said I'm not mad, I'm sad that we spent the night in different rooms and she felt she needed to leave, but I didn't want to have that kind of emotion-based conversation through text as we tend to confuse things or read nasty tones when having serious conversations through text. A few hours late she texted again to say she was feeling better and was going to go out with her friends. I can't help but feel betrayed. If it was the next day I would have been going with her as per the plan, but she didn't offer that on Boxing Day. I'm not sure if I did something wrong over Christmas, but I can't help but feel I did everything I could to make her feel safe and comfortable despite her period, and then it just disappeared later that evening and she was willing to go dance with friends with no thought or care as to how that would make me feel. Part of me thinks she was already making plans and just made an excuse, but part of me thinks it's the truth and she just didn't think how hurtful it would be to call time with your boyfriend early to go spend time with friends, and the rest of me thinks I'm overreacting. I don't even know why I'm saying anything here, probably just to vent, but also I'm hoping someone tells me I'm overreacting for being hurt, I guess. Should I, F33, fight for my relationship? F33, have been with my fiancé, M34, for over 7 months. Our relationship moved quickly, and I moved in with him a month and a half into dating, and we got engaged 5 months into dating. Throughout our relationship, I was in school and stopped working a month after moving in, so he has supported me for almost 6 months, and my only contribution has been cooking and cleaning. In this economy, it has not been easy for him, and he is under immense financial stress. I had and still have every intention of paying him at least 2 or 3 paychecks once I start working while paying half the bills. I graduated this month and will be licensed after passing my boards in January. My fiancé has been very kind, sweet, and supportive. He has a lot of qualities I would wish in a partner. He cares for me when I'm sick, buys me lunch, and showers me with words of appreciation every day. He tells me he thinks of me all day, every day. Most times I feel like the luckiest girl. However, I have come to realize that I cannot reconcile with him in how different we are. Initially, he told me he was working on becoming closer to our faith. This was very important to me while we were dating. I have not seen evidence of this in our 7 months together. If anything, I feel as if I am drifting from my faith in our time together. He drinks more than 4 cans or bottles of beer most days, or a whole wine bottle in a day. I have tried to have a discussion with him about reducing his alcohol intake and even challenged him to have a dry November. However, he counters me by saying drinking is his way of dealing with stress and ADHD. I suggested going to the gym and he did it for 2 weeks, then stopped. I did not notice the level of how much he drinks until 2 months into moving in with him. It's strange I would not have caught it, as my dad was an alcoholic while I was growing up. My fiancé becomes sensitive when I bring it up and becomes defensive while recounting how he was able to stop drinking cold turkey previously. Another thing I cannot reconcile with is that he does not pick up after himself. When I first moved in, he told me that he had experienced a period of depression and his place had just turned into a mess. I didn't mind and we cleaned it together. He would vacuum every day and pick up after himself. If anything, he would be upset with me for not cleaning up properly. Now, he leaves his dirty plates on the couch and coffee table and empty bottles of alcohol on the floor. The living room is always a mess, and he gets upset with me for not wanting to spend time with him there. It became evident to me that not picking up after himself is a formed bad habit, not a phase of depression. He leaves his clothes on the floor and it drives me crazy. I know he works a hard job, but to pick up after yourself should not be so hard as an adult. For whatever reason, he doesn't like people pointing out his personal flaws or attempt to change his routine. He likes to feel in control of his life, as likely a result of childhood trauma. I have seen him make changes in this aspect to accommodate me to become more comfortable and at home, so it's not that he is beyond any change. He is just resistant to it. I'd prefer he recognize the need to change on his own and make the attempt to change. I love my fiancé very much. He is incredibly supportive, very giving, and soft-hearted. I know there are not many men like him out there, and I should be grateful for him and the support he has given me. He grew up in a harsh environment with irresponsible parents but works hard and is responsible in his career. I am very proud of how he overcame his situation, and I respect him. However, I have reached a point where I am tired of asking him to improve on some bad habits and meet resistance or getting a few weeks of attempts before reverting back. I have also noticed that his communication style is different from mine. If we are arguing about something, instead of reflecting on what I am saying, he will point out a wrong I did in the past that is unrelated to the current conversation. If I point out that he did or does something, he becomes sensitive and will deny that he did it when we were both there to witness him do it. He responds impulsively to win the argument, then apologizes later after he stops to think it through. We do eventually meet a resolution, but the initial communication is rocky. If I say or do something that offends him, he immediately responds without thinking it through or pointing out that my actions or words were hurtful. This is a new experience for me, as in my family we always point out when someone wrongs us rather than respond in anger because words spoken cannot be taken back. He has never said anything too crazy, but his words still do upset me. I don't like arguments. I avoid them as much as I can or attempt to resolve an issue before it gets there. He has no issues arguing. He almost impulsively ends up in one with me, but since I am conscious not to get into one, I almost always navigate my way from it, then talk it out with him when I have calmed my thoughts. Overall, we move too fast. Now that I am not spending all my time in school worrying about passing, I have time to realize that our relationship is maybe unhealthy. Should I walk away, or should I keep trying with him? In my religion, marriage is forever. Divorce is not recognized unless infidelity or DV. You also don't give up because things are hard. Every season of hardship passes. He has accepted me as a whole and my imperfections. Is it wrong that I'm not able to do the same? He has also made strides in improvements in his lack of emotional regulation, but it comes out once in a while. If I can enter a lifetime commitment when I recognize the issues before the marriage. Dating a nice guy. Do I need to chill out or call it quits soon? Hi everyone. Dating Tragic here, 47F. And I think I have found a really genuine, sweet, thoughtful, and kind man, 48M. I've a divorcee a long time ago now and have been cautious to meet people with compatible wants in life, and have now been dating a lovely man exclusively for 4 months. I'm a reflective person. Enjoy a balanced life of time alone and with friends or family. He's very outgoing, lots of friends, lots of fun. We both have big happy lives of our own. He has done thoughtful things like washing my car, just because, or cooking food, bring me roses from his garden. These feel special, though I do find I'm close through conversations and quality time most of all. We are both genuinely happy in each other's company. I catch him singing and whistling around the house. Intellectual compatibility and chemistry are all great. All these things I appreciate and enjoy. I've been trying to work out why I'm holding back from greater closeness. I do feel I can't fully relax. I would like to work out if it's fear-based / past experiences, some kind of incompatibility, or just that our timing and pacing is a little different from each other. At the moment, I don't see any obvious red flags. There has been some conflict for him with his ex-partner, but progressively that is being managed more effectively, and he's respectful about my wish to remain separate from those things. We live a distance from each other and catch up maybe once or twice a week, as he has young children / waiting till we know our direction together before involving them. He is also very involved in his hobbies and interests that take up 2+ nights a week. I like that he has his own identity, but sometimes I don't feel priority. But maybe that's because he has so little time already. So I still have a lot of alone time. I'm a parent, but my kids have left home. Our dating started very romantically and there was an easy connection, but the lack of freedom of just needing to be patient for the next catch up, while I understand and agree it's necessary, feels a bit stifling. He seems in no rush and happy to spend time and for things to evolve, getting to know each other slowly and organically. He's possibly still getting into his own skin and routines after ending a longer relationship early this year. I tend to feel more like I'd like an intentional dating experience where we ask questions to understand each other. He tends to find my questions put him on the spot, and he may not reciprocate in asking about me. Do I just need some patience, or is it more a personality thing that won't shift? I am keen to know if others have had an experience that feels 98% perfect yet can't fully leap in. And if so, how did you get unstuck? I've tried talking openly with him but don't want to do this too often as it may affect him, when I just might need to sort this in my own mind and heart. It is wild out there to find love these days. Being in a relationship that I know is not going anywhere. What can I do or say to end this amicably? IF, 28. Recently got into a relationship with someone, M32. For a month or two, so not that long. Even though I enjoy his company, but after observing him for these months, I know he is not the person I would want to eventually settle down with. He parties, drinks, and smokes, and I don't like any of those. I am an introvert. I can see that since he got with me, he has been doing a lot less of those, and we spent great quality time together, but I knew this is not sustainable. I am in a position where I don't know what to say or do to end this without hurting him because he seems like a great guy and he cares about me, and we did have a great together, so I honestly don't regret knowing him, but I just think that I shouldn't carry this on before it gets too deep. My 20M ex-girlfriend, 19F, tried reconnecting with me after 3 weeks. We were talking and she told me she made out with a guy. What can I do to overcome all this mess? Me and Mai were together for almost 1.5 years. We met at our hometown in September of 2023, but in October I AHD to leave to go study at my uni. We're doing long distance until the next summer. It was really good. We had some rough patches, but we overcame them. We had a strong connection, I'd say. Everything was good until June 2024. I woke up one day after a sleepover with her and I had a gut feeling that something is wrong. I decided to check her phone without her permission. I know it's bad, but I was feeling something really wrong. I found out in her messages with her best friend that she talked to her ex. I didn't know what they said, but she had deleted the conversation. Her best friend was telling her that it isn't right for my ex to go study to the cafe that her ex works, and yes, she can delete the messages with her ex, but he has them, etc. Then my girlfriend saw me looking through the messages. She grabbed her phone and she deleted all the messages with her best friend. Then I decided to break up. My trust to her was gone. After 2 weeks of us being broken up, we kind of started talking again, and I decided to take her back, but I couldn't forget what happened, and I let her know that I can't trust her the same way I did. Fast forward to the end of the summer. Everything is great, we had great times together. Now it was time for me to go again to study. Some days before I was scheduled to fly, the memories of the event with her ex came back, and in a moment of weakness I took her phone and I saw his Instagram password. I know it's very wrong, but I couldn't leave behind all the things that happened because I was feeling like an idiot and I still didn't have answers to what happened exactly. I didn't log in, I just had for any case. We said our goodbyes and I went away. I'll be honest, this time out long distance part wasn't the same from my side. I didn't give her enough attention and I know that. I was kinda away from her. I don't have the exact reason, but for sure wasn't infidelity of any kind. I just had a weird feeling towards her since the event and I couldn't let it go. I guess? Still not sure what was the reason. I didn't want to talk to her on the phone that much, I didn't want to FaceTime her that much, I didn't tell her where I go, things I did the last time I was away studying. She expressed her thoughts about all this and she begged that I fix it because she loves me and she want to be with me. She kept asking me why am I like this and she was trying to find a solution, but for more than a month I didn't change and I know I could have. She literally begged me to FaceTime her. I know I didn't talk to her well. I spoke very bad, using bad language. I told her every time sorry. She called me crying asking me why am I like this and I just got annoyed? I don't know why, but I truly love her. Maybe I got overwhelmed? Maybe I felt pressured? I still don't know how I went there. In the meantime of the 1.5 months we were visiting each other, but nothing really changed. I was still the same and she still didn't like it. So one day after a heated argument we decided to break up, 7th of December 2024. We were on no contact for almost 2 weeks, but we were talking through TikTok reposts. The second week I remembered I had her Instagram password, so I decided to log in. She didn't notice it. I know it was very wrong and I would like to undone that, but I was thinking that maybe she talks with her ex again, etc. Everything was good and I felt really bad because even though we were broken up, she didn't even talk to another guy. After what I saw, I decided to call her. For 2 days, it was going great. We were talking. We were proposing solutions to our problems, etc. But in my mind, I remembered that yesterday I saw that she searched someone on Instagram and I decided to ask her, "Who is this guy?" She immediately connected the dots and she went into a full angry mode. She blocked me everywhere. She talked very bad to me and that was the end of it. We didn't talk again. This happened a more than week ago, 19th of December. The last 3 days I noticed she unblocked me from TikTok and again we were talking through the reposts. And once again we decided to talk on the phone. We were arguing about the whole thing for hours and I was telling her that I will fix everything because I love her. I saw a change of mind in her. I noticed in her voice. After that, I decided to ask her what she did in the week that we were again no contact. She told me that she wants to come clean. She told me that a really nice guy approached her, with great personality, and she decided to give him a chance because I was treating her very wrong and he was very kind. She told me the guy was very good and they kissed. They went out 2 times, but they are in the same new, after breakup, friend group, so as a group they went out more times. Once I heard it, my heart dropped. I had flashbacks of that morning that I found her messages with her ex. My heart was pounding like crazy. I asked her if she liked it. She said no, she felt nothing because she is thinking of me, she just wanted a friend and it kinda went there. I got kinda angry, but she said she doesn't owe me any explanation because we were broken up and she says that if she treated me that bad and I did the same thing she would be okay with that. I don't know if what she did is normal. Why would she do that and then want to communicate with me? I want to fix everything with her, but this is, I don't know, weird. I don't know how to react, what to do. I'm thinking of just cutting her off, but deeply I want to fix everything. I even got her a Christmas gift even though we are no together. Please, I need help. Should I, 21F, be concerned about what my boyfriend, 22M, said? Am I overreacting? I've been with my BF for almost 2.5 years, and he's never made me feel concerned in this way. Am I overreacting? My BF and I were laying down and laughing and messing around, and then he put me in a headlock without pressure and then goes, "I could put you to sleep," and it kind of freaked me out that he said that and that the thought would even pop into his head about me. It wasn't necessarily the headlock that bothered me, because I know he was just messing around and he wasn't doing it hard. But the fact he said, "I could put you to sleep," really weirded me out and caught me off guard. So I asked him why that would even pop into his head and he goes, "That's what they do in UFC." But it just really freaked me out. Am I overreacting or is it concerning he said that? I feel like I, 34M, can't speak about my true feelings with my 34F partner. I've never felt so alone while having a partner before. Long story short, I have been with my girlfriend for a little over a year now. We've worked on a lot of issues together and have been, like any other couple, through a lot. Alcoholism, the passing of her parents, my fractured relationship with my mother, growing up not knowing my father, etc., etc. Lately, especially during the holiday season, I struggle with depression. I feel like every time it's obvious that I'm feeling down or need a small amount of encouragement or uplifting, there's no attempt on her end to reach out or inquire or provide that. I've tried to talk to her about when I get quiet, the meaning of that and / or what I need in those moments to feel better. Nothing ever improves. My question: how do I approach her and tell her she's not providing the emotional support, and hasn't been for quite some time, that I need in order to feel like I'm not wasting my time here? At the same time, avoiding an argument. It's as if she doesn't know me, or at least that's what it feels like on my end for me. I could go into so many further details regarding this and a ton of other issues if anyone needs clarification. It's been a tumultuous rise so far, and I'm not sure if I should stick it out, or if I'm able to for that matter. I feel like I, 34M, can't speak about my true feelings with my 34F partner. I've never felt so alone while having a partner before. How do I explain to my family that I don't want to spend the holidays without my partner TLDR? How do I 1. Explain that I will not spend the holidays without my partner? I have said this statement for multiple years and it hasn't stuck. 2. Manage to spend time with both families during the holidays and make my time with my family actually enjoyable. Me, 24F, and my wife, 27F, have been together or 5.5 years and married for 10 months. Both of our families celebrate New Year's, not Christmas. This becomes a problem with also the fact that my parents have a pretty boring celebration and I don't really care to celebrate with them. My wife's chosen family, on the other hand, loves to play games and do a bunch of fun stuff and prep on New Year's Eve and stay up late playing games. I like spending New Year's with them. I also don't like spending the holidays in general without my partner. My family, aka my sister mainly, is always like, why are you so attached at the hip? Can't you just come on your own? You don't have to do everything together. And I am so tired of this sentiment. Like, I am not bothered that she has spent holidays without her husband, but I don't like the idea of not spending the holidays with my wife. And I always feel like I'm just being guilt-tripped to hang out with my family, instead of getting reasons to actually hang out with them, and constantly yelled at by my sister. How do I 1. Explain that I will not spend the holidays without my partner? I have said this statement for multiple years and it hasn't stuck. 2. Manage to spend time with both families during the holidays and make my time with my family actually enjoyable. In other complaints, they always get sad if I change my plans that make more sense for us, but like they don't make effort to see me and stuff. Like, we moved out of town this year and all year my family has been like, no, we can't make it up there. Her family said they would for Thanksgiving, but some financial stuff made it harder. At least they had the sentiment to try and show interest in coming. My family is just like, no, like I live 30 minutes from them and they came over like once in those 2 years, not for the lack of me inviting them. Ugh, just needed to vent. How do I trust my boyfriend after he refuses to tell me the truth about his past? When my 18M boyfriend and I 18F first started dating, it was important for us to know each other's past. We talked for a very long time and really got to know each other before jumping in the relationship. Therefore, when we first started dating, we both asked each other who we previously talked to and dated, with expectations that we told the truth. Neither of us are really interested in talking to or dating many people. One of the reasons we talk so long, so naturally out of curiosity we wanted to know each other's past. He expects me to tell the truth and I expect him as well. While we were talking, I noticed a particular girl who was in his likes, on his spam, he was on her spam, etc. Keep in mind her spam consisted of 2 people, which was just him and her. Before, everyone says that you can't pay attention to social media. For someone our ages, this is a very good indication. He asked me to play Minecraft after we started dating, and he was my only Xbox friend. Before I joined, I noticed there were many people that showed as mutual friends, but he had just deleted his friends, basically removing any trace of the past friend people. I guess this was a glitch and Xbox hadn't fully processed the friend deletion since he has just done it. This was okay, except I saw the same girl on his Minecraft mutual friend list as well. It appears that they used to talk. She reposted all of his posts, only had him on her spam, was one of the only guys he followed, even played Minecraft with him, etc. This isn't a big deal. I understand he will talk to other people just like I did. The only problem is that he never mentioned talking to her. Anyone that he has done similar things with, he always assures me was his friend. He is a very friendly person and I really believe that those were just some of the people he would hang out with occasionally. He really only have 2/3 of these anyways, so it's not like it is anything crazy. I know y'all might think it sounds suspicious, but it really isn't. Anyways, he never says he was really good friends with her or anything. I have only brought her up once trying to not seem suspicious. During the Minecraft situation. He nervously said he played Minecraft with her and his best friend. He doesn't follow her or anything like that anymore. This just makes it even more suspicious to me. Her contact isn't in his phone, they don't have each other on any socials, and it is clear they have cut each other off. She unfollowed him first though, and for a while he was following her without a follow back. He has girlfriends he has fallen out with, but he at least has them on Snap or a contact saved. How come he felt the need to delete her contact, etc.? This is not a normal reaction for him having a girlfriend. All of these things make it look like they were talking. It is not an issue, it is just the fact he will never admit to it. I have heard he has talked to other people before, and he just says he was interested and it doesn't count. This situation looks like he was more than just interested. It is honestly off of a gut feeling, and there are lots of things that make it appear they were talking as well. It bothers me he expects me to tell him every detail about my past and to not lie, but he obviously doesn't want to tell me his. How do I get over this and how do I trust him? It makes me wonder why he even feels the need to lie to begin with. BF, 25M. Snores so loudly it affects my 25F, sleep high. I am typing this as I have been interrupted in sleep yet again. I'm not asking for advice on how to communicate with him to see an ENT doctor, as he has already agreed to do that no problem. I am more so just asking for advice on how we can help our relationship for the time being. My boyfriend snores incredibly loudly. It is concerning sometimes too where he is gasping for breath, and it sounds like it could be sleep apnea. It used to only be this bad when he drank, but lately it has become an every night ordeal, and he has not been drinking lately. We have tried everything. Earplugs, nose strips, mouthguard, sleeping on side, he has lost weight, etc. But it is still so loud it wakes me up in the middle of the night, and then I wake him up by nudging him or kicking him. Then he wakes up and gets angry that I woke him up. He also seems offended whenever I talk to him the next day about the snoring, which I hate because I don't want his feelings to be hurt, but I want him to understand the severity of how it is affecting me. We sleep in separate rooms most nights, but it sucks because we want to be able to sleep together like a normal couple. I'm tired of being exhausted, and I just want advice for how to navigate our relationship so that we both don't hate each other. Thanks. Was I cheated on? F31. I'm 30 during this year. I felt very lonely and insecure. I noticed my partner was making less and less effort to keep conversations going. When we were about to see each other, he would only talk about how much he needed sex, and that made me sad because I wanted him to value other aspects of our relationship. But I thought it was just a phase and that things would eventually improve. He told me he had been watching porn but decided to stop because it was affecting our intimacy when we were together. During this year, a new colleague joined his team. Reminder. They worked remotely and only saw each other when he came here for a week. They had frequent video calls because she needed his help. I overheard some of their conversations, which made me uncomfortable. I told him I didn't like how close they seemed and that it made me feel very insecure. They would talk about their personal interests, family matters, holiday plans, etc., spending half an hour or more discussing such things before getting to work. In early September, I asked him whether we were still together out of love or simply out of habit because I felt he was distant and didn't care for me as much as before. Since we weren't together in person, we talked via video call. He was very upset and crying, telling me he loved me deeply and wanted to be with me, which gave me comfort and hope. At the end of September and beginning of October, I visited him and everything went well. We had fun, went out, had good intimacy, and I was very happy when he told me he wanted to have children next year and wanted me to be the mother of his kids. He said I would be a great mom. However, in October, he stopped being affectionate, stopped treating me as usual, and stopped saying he loved me. I felt him pulling away. In November, he returned to our country. That week, he came home between 4 and 5 a.m., and on a Saturday, he ended things with me. He said many strange things which didn't make sense because he had always told me I made him very happy and that I was one of the most important people in his life, just like his mother. He said he still loved me and didn't know if it was the right decision but felt he had to make a choice because he no longer believed in a future for us. After that, he left and we didn't get to discuss it further. He came back to our country in December for Christmas, and I managed to talk to him. Despite feeling some disdain from him at times, he told me he no longer loved me and had started talking to someone else just a week after our breakup. I asked if it was his colleague, but he refused to answer. Suspicious, I started looking for answers. I tried to contact his colleague, but she never responded to me. Eventually, I found out who her boyfriend was. When I spoke to him, I discovered that she had broken up with him around the same time my partner ended things with me. He said she had become distant during that period and had even come home late the same week with the same excuses my partner had given me. It was impossible not to think they had cheated. Her boyfriend was shocked and said he hadn't seen it coming. They were even looking for a house to move in together. They had been in a relationship for 8 years. What do you think? I believe cheating isn't just physical. I had already told him I didn't like how close they were and that it made me feel insecure. But he did nothing. He kept giving her attention. I feel like he stayed with me while testing the waters with her, and once he realized he had a chance with her, he left me. It's been very hard to deal with all of this. I feel lost, directionless, lacking confidence, and terrified of being unhappy and not achieving my dreams. I feel a heavy weight on my chest. I'm always nauseous, have no appetite and sleep poorly. How can someone talk about building a family and then end everything? How can someone stop loving me in just 1 month? I always wanted to build a family with him. I always supported, praised, and boosted his self-esteem. I encouraged him in everything. He always said I made him very happy and helped him feel good. But in our last conversation, he told me he realized he wasn't happy. I'm already seeing a psychologist. My 22M girlfriend's 22F mom treats her horrible and has for years. Should I take action? People of the Reddit, I have been dating my 22M girlfriend, 22F, for over 3.5 years. We're very happy in our lives and self-sufficient. We've lived together for over 2 years. Both of us recently moved to the south from the north this past summer and have good jobs and a great relationship. Her mom and dad got divorced at a really young age. Mom remarried, and both of them are truly unpleasant people. She cut off her dad for a while because of his actions, but's that a whole other story. Her mom has money, paid for her college, got her a car and all these financial-centered things and holds that over her. But she treats my GF terribly. She said things to her that are truly disgusting even before the events that occurred this past week, such as fat-shaming her even when she is not overweight at all, insults her appearance. Most of the actions my GF takes insults me to her etc. She previously suggested that my GF be committed to the psych ward for wanting to move in with me after a year of dating. She plenty of times has used her power over her by threatening to take away things such as phone and car insurance when GF was in college and calling her ungrateful, unless she did damn near anything her mom demanded of her even after she moved out. This past holiday week she went down to her mom's vacation home for Christmas. I was unable to go with since my job requires me to be on the road for a week at a time and I missed actual Christmas altogether. Because that was the case, my parents came down for the weekend to celebrate Christmas before that with us. It was 2 weeks' notice and my GF decided to delay her drive 2 days so she could see my parents for a couple days because they absolutely cherish her and she cherishes them back. We had an amazing time. She tells her mom about not coming down until 2 days, the original plan, after weeks in advance, and it didn't even matter much because they had nothing planned and are ending up spending 7 days together anyways. Her mom is absolutely furious with her and yells at her on the phone. Didn't talk to her for at least a week after. When she leaves to go to her mom's, she drove 9 hours to be welcomed by her crazy mother, accusing her of not even caring about her, putting my family and I way before her, believes that I am a master manipulator intent on separating her from her mom. She also called her boy crazy, and that she isn't thinking straight, in between telling her how disappointed she is in her. Now, I didn't even persuade my GF to stay for my parents. She completely chose to do that herself. I simply let my GF know they were coming and she chose to make time for everyone she wanted to see for the holidays. To say the least, the week has been hell for her. Her mom has belittled her almost every day unapologetically, suggested multiple times that I am brainwashing her, called her ungrateful, and when she's not doing that she's getting into screaming matches with her husband, who is a genuinely chill guy. She even suggested she was thinking of a punishment for my GF because of the 2 days she spent with my family. I'm super upset about all of this because my GF is the sweetest girl there is, and she is scared of confrontation and won't stand up to her mom at all. She already goes to therapy in part because of all the things her mom has said to her growing up and continues to say to her. She knows it's not right what she says to her and how she treats her, and yet she will not stand up to her and tries to simply change the subject even though she is incredibly hurt by the things she constantly says to her. Her mom is truly rotten, I believe, and I can't stand how she makes my GF break down crying some days because of the things she says to her. She gets back tomorrow and will finally be able to let her emotions out for how she was treated this past week and how horrible her mom was to her. I've never had any confrontation with her mom before. We've always been cordial and nice to one another, but in a fake way because that's all her mom is. Fake. She'll be super nice to your face but say terrible things about you behind your back. My question to you guys is how to go about all of this. My GF has already cut off her dad and is sort of rekindling with him slowly. I would hate to see her cut off her mom as well, but she's arguably 10x worse to her than her dad. The huge issue is my GF is walked all over by her mom very easily. and she doesn't take action to defend herself from these verbal assaults and just takes it. But when it's over, my GF will break down in tears and has for years. I'm very careful to not get involved usually, but I am leaning towards absolutely confronting the hell out of her mother and giving her a verbal assault of my own for all the horrible things she has said and done to her the next time I see her. I know it's not a good idea, but I don't know how much more of comforting my GF cry for hours I can take with her mom causing it all. It feels like watching a bully pick on the same kid over and over again and sitting there doing nothing. There's a huge part of me that wants to take action for her because I don't know if my GF ever will, and unfortunately she will keep being miserable until something is said or done. It takes a heavy toll on me as well just watching it happen as I support her the best I can through it. I would never suggest to her that she cut off her mom. That's all her decision to make, and I am trying to avoid at all costs the choosing game between myself and her mom. Should I just stand by and be supportive, or should I intervene and put her mom in her place? Thanks for the help. My 19F boyfriend, 18M, doesn't care about spending NYE with me today. I saw my boyfriend for the first time in 5 days after his family was out of town for Christmas. We had dinner at my house and talked about how much we missed each other. Later, I asked him, "What are we doing for New Year's Eve?" He replied, "Do you even want to do New Year's?" His response caught me off guard because I assumed we'd spend the evening together, especially since he bailed on our Christmas plans due to his parents deciding to go out of town last minute. I understood that wasn't his choice, but it still stung. When I said I did want to do something, he told me he already planned to attend 2 parties his friends are hosting. Essentially, he said, "I'm going to these parties whether you come or not. If you don't want to join, you can stay home." This hurt because I thought we'd spend New Year's together. It feels like he didn't care whether I was involved or not since he made plans without even asking me. Being Japanese, New Year's is an important holiday for me. My family went back to Japan yesterday to visit relatives, but I stayed because of winter classes. Without my boyfriend, I'll be completely alone. I feel like spending the holidays together isn't a priority for him, and it makes me feel like an afterthought compared to his friends. I'm really sad. After the conversation, I just started crying and I sent him home. Am I overreacting for feeling this way? I W31 had a fallout with my husband's M33 Kaosing W27. Am I overreacting, and how do I act moving forward? Hi, sorry this will be long. I'll try to make it as short as possible. Would love some advice though. I was friends with my husband's cousin W28 Margaret. In the last year, we bonded a lot over being mistreated by my husband's family, to be fair. They are very difficult and have a lot of unhealthy behaviors. My husband and his sister are the golden children of the family. The grandma openly talks about it. I think my FIL is her favorite son, and that rubs off on his children. My husband and I are high school sweethearts. When I was younger, I had to deal with a lot of jealousy and mistreatment regarding me being with my husband. I suffered a lot. I was young and didn't know how to stand up for myself. My mom, who's also a therapy, always tell me I can't do anything right for them and I should stop trying. That's what I did, and it got a lot better since I removed myself from the quotation. I was the scapegoat for their expectations surrounding my husband not being fulfilled. There's still a lot of jealousy going around, and sometimes I get triggered, but mostly I've been okay. One example, because it will be relevant later. My SILW34 is pregnant with the first child of the family. My husband and I bought our unborn niece a little teddy bear from a baby boutique. We both work and are child-free. It's true we can afford it, but I didn't think much of it. I just saw the teddy in the store, went in and bought it. Around 3 months later, my SIL came to visit and my husband's grandma gave her a lot of clothes as a present. She then started telling my SIL loudly that she left the tag on the present so she can see that she can get quality things for the baby in retail for a good price. And not everybody has the money to shop in pretentious baby boutiques. It was a dig at our present we gave them a month ago. My husband just ignores her and tells me she's jealous, but I was hurt. There is no need to talk shit about our present here. Just do you think my SIL is no one to compare presents. Well, back to the story. So Margaret and I became close friends in the last couple of months especially. I helped her a lot and defended her in her own family and also regarding my husband, because he kept telling me to be careful and she's difficult. Well, I should have listened. When my SIL announced her pregnancy, I told my BIL I would love to plan her baby shower. Couple of months later, my husband told me that Margaret was asking him for BIL's number and that he thinks she wanted to plan a baby shower for her. That's when things started to turn sour. I called her and told her that I'm more than happy to plan together. She was up for it, but soon started to do things I knew and told her that my BIL would not be okay with. I have to admit that I was triggered because it reminded me of how the family used to stomp on my boundaries, and I didn't want to be part of crossing my BIL's boundaries. I wanted to respect them. So I told her that it's not okay for her to just invite people and decide things that my BIL didn't want to. Also, she didn't even talking to me, and that I thought we were doing this together. That's where she told me she doesn't have to tell me shit, and she didn't want to plan this baby shower together. She wanted to plan it alone to show my SIL how much she means to her. I think she seeks validation and love through actions. She also has a lot of trauma and comes from a very problematic and narcissistic household. She told me that she asked my husband so I wouldn't know that she's planning something because she wanted to be the host and plan things her way. She wanted it to be her baby shower for my SIL and not a group thing. I was very hurt and went to talk to my BIL and told him, listen, I'm not the one crossing you boundaries, and I can offer to do a baby shower that includes X, Y, Z. If you want something else, please accept her offer. He decided he liked my idea more, and when he told her, she absolutely blew up, telling me I'm ruining it for her. He chose me and she isn't doing shit anymore and she isn't coming. I was flabbergasted. I talked to my BIL and decided to pull out of planning and be a guest because I didn't like the toxicity of it and I want my SIL to have a beautiful party. I met up with Margaret and we talked it out. She told me some things that really hurt my feelings, how it's none of my business what she asks her cousin, my husband. He told me without me asking, but never mind. And I told her I was so excited to plan this with her. But we talked it out, or so I thought. When we were barely leaving, I told her the story of her grandma and the teddy and that I was very hurt by her jealousy. She then said, well, so I'm not the only one jealous of you and comparing myself to you. I went home that day really sad. I don't want this toxic competition anymore. I distanced myself from her a bit, but was still friendly. I just kept to myself. Fast forward to Christmas. She announces to the family and me that she is pregnant too, and far along, so she was already pregnant when the fight happened. My husband's grandma reacts poorly to the announcement. The golden child SAL is pregnant already, so she basically doesn't give a fuck. Everyone gets presents from the grandma and she and her husband get less than everyone else. They're the less favorite after all. And she comes to talk about this to me. I was still really hurt and told her that as she started comparing herself to me and acting the same way her family acts towards me, I'm not up for consoling her when they treat her poorly. I told her that I love her, but that I have to put myself first and that I swore to myself that I will never end up in toxic competition with her family again. I also told her that the things she said to me were really hurtful and I don't know if I want to be friends with someone that is jealous of me and tries to do things behind my back. She understood but was very sad. She says for her it's normal to say such things. I told her why she wants to be friends if she has such a negative view on me. She told me she thinks she's the worst person. She's not a good person and it's normal to have negative view if you also have a positive view. Coming to now. I planned a little book for my SIL where all the friends can take part. I designed the whole book myself. It's like a friendship album. I asked her if she wants to also take part, and she literally tells me that she's really looking forward to see if my BIL expects my present because she wanted to gift them a baby journal and he said that they don't need one. So she's nosy to see if he treats me better again. Also, the design looks a lot like the milestone card she's gifting them now. I chose a navy blue, but I didn't know she was gifting them the cards. So I sat down and redesigned the book to another color and really tried to have no resemblance. I told her she still can take part, but she has to stop with the jealousy and comparison. It will ruin our friendship. I send her a long audio telling her that I'm really disappointed after I talked to her about how much these comparisons and jealousy hurt me and how much I suffered for always being the bad one and black sheep in this family, the scapegoat, and now she's treating me the same. She then told me that I'm right, that every time she talks to me she has a negative feeling and she doesn't want that for her pregnancy and she wants to limit the contact. That she doesn't see that she's doing anything wrong and that on the contrary she thinks I'm doing everything wrong and acting malicious towards her with purpose. I then told her that I'm totally fine with going no contact. But I'm really disappointed with her and I want to be honest and I don't think we will be able to repair this. She broke my trust in a way that's not salvageable. The thing is that her family likes to go no contact for a few weeks and then act like nothing happened. So I told her if that's the intent, just know that I'm not gonna act like nothing happened. She said I was threatening her and that we'll talk in a few months. I wished her all the best for her pregnancy. I am beyond devastated. I am so sad. I don't know how to act around them without them thinking I'm acting superior. I really am not. I would love to have planned this baby shower together for my sister-in-law. I really would love to be part of her baby's life. I really love her and thought of her as family. My husband tells me that she is difficult and she overestimates her relationship to his sister. That his family has low self-esteem and they get their self-esteem by trying to know others down. How should I act about the baby shower? I'm thinking of not going because it's going to be at hers. But on the other side, I want to be there for my sister-in-law even more because this shower is nothing she would have wanted. Margaret has planned her own shower. There are barely people invited, 5 friends including me. If I drop out there would only be 4. My SIL has a lot of friends. I also don't know if it's pregnancy hormones. Apparently she is suffering a lot with mood swings. Thank you so much if you read it all. In the one toxic in my relationship, hi, it's a story about me, 22M, and my boyfriend, 24M. We know each other from past 2 years. We met as a random hookup, but then almost after a year we decided to get into relationship. I'm the toxic one in my relationship and I do everything intentionally. Intentionally not to hurt him but just to have fun secretly. I'm in a relationship where I love him a lot but also I want my freedom to doing anything. Anything means having fun out of my relationship. Connecting more people online not emotionally but just for my short-term pleasure. Maybe I give excuse of freedom to have fun but I don't even want to stop this. I'm completely aware of what I do but also I don't feel that it's a bad thing to do. Yes, I'm aware that it's bad to do being in a relationship but I don't want to stop as well. I'm completely aware that I won't get anyone better than him but why I want to be with him as well as I want me freedom so that I can do anything I want. Neither I want an open relationship. I can't leave him because I loves him neither he want to leave me because he loves me. What should be done in this situation where you want your partner as well as your free life? I'm so done, but I can't say anything 21F, can't say anything or I'll lose my education, rights and probably my chance at a reasonably okay future. It's a bit of a read. So please bear with me. I'm studying at another country, came here 4 years ago, in South America. I grew up in the States. I don't really know the language or culture here other than what my parents taught me, but everyone assumes because I'm a girl I'm going to fit into a mold and adjust because I have to. This last part isn't my own words. It's what I've been told. Personally, I don't believe in gender roles, but I do believe in respecting one another for the other's skills and contributions and balancing each other out. Growing up, my mother, 50F, used to love to point out how I was nothing like her and how she has a closer connection to my maternal cousin, her brother's daughter, and how they're more alike than she and I ever will be. Since then, I grew up to resent her and anyone who said I looked like my mother. There have been several instances of other actions, but this is just one example. I got over it and forgave everyone, and I just cope with them by not speaking about anything other than superficial stuff. My father's 58F side of the family is trash. They abused my mom and my father was basically the only voice of reason in that house. He was also confused about his priorities because his mother was a master manipulator. I admit he neglected my mom, and I've asked her multiple times why she didn't just leave. She says she had her family's support but didn't want to. My parents aren't horrible people but that was just a background on them. They haven't had it easy. Fast forward to now, I've traveled to my home country to study and I've been staying with my grandparents and uncle 40M and aunt 32F, plus their kids now 2 and 4M. I love kids so I have no issues taking care of their kids, but it's gotten to a point where they're competing with me, 21-year-old, to be at their level. I'm expected to manage their household and to watch their kids at the drop of a hat. There have been several instances where I have come home early from uni because I was worried for my grandma having to manage the kids and home at her age, but now I'm starting to think even that was a mistake. My grandpa and uncle are both loud whenever they please. Honestly, they're pathetic in their ideas and words, and my grandma doesn't have it any better. She is also abusive herself while also caring for me. My aunt is a whole other story. She's very manipulative. She's relentless towards me. But in front of others, she's the perfect daughter-in-law. Even though YM grandma has admitted on occasion that she's terrible, she doesn't support me in front of others and I'm left to take the blame. I've never thought of ending myself over these pathetic experiences recently. I used to when it was my mother. My father sends money to cover our expenses and has said he'd like to pay what he would pay for dorm and food accommodations, but they refuse every time. My father has an account here and keeps a large sum in there and has said for them to take out whatever they wish. The money he sends them for our expenses are directly into their account. They encourage independence if it's what they like. Other than that, it's just do this, don't do that. They also have labeled me as a rude, obnoxious girl who's going to get beat up by her in-laws and future husband. Nothing new. I mean, my mom has too since I was 6 years old. I know if I say anything to my dad, he's going to talk to my mom and she's going to handle it. She'll convince him to not say anything, and when she visits I know she'll beat the trap put of me. Then she'll probably ship me off with someone trashy. I'll be forced into a situation and stuck forever. I earn my own money on the side, but I never spend it. My father has said to use the money he sends for my stuff and save up. Even then, I hardly spend more than $20 per month on my personal wants. I don't like spending money much or eating out. This is the only place I can say something without being misheard or manipulated into apologizing for something I didn't even intend to say. So thanks for reading, I guess. My 16F girlfriend has been ghosting me. 16M. Me and my girlfriend have a very tricky dynamic. We are the same age, but she lives with only her dad that won't let her date. So we are a secret. He goes through her phone. He watches her internet searches. He looks at her time spent on each apps. He won't let her leave the house. He tracks her location. And anytime she has a break from school, like right now, he takes the whole break off from work to babysit. He drives her to school and he picks her up. She gets grounded for everything, and she spent weeks convincing him that we were study partners and to let her have my number. We can only talk online other than during our lunch break, and she hasn't texted me. The last thing she said a week ago was responding to one of my texts where I told her how grateful I was to have her with an "I love you too, sweetheart." And since then she has gone completely ghost. I've texted her and she hasn't responded in a week. We use our school iPad to text when she is grounded / doesn't have her phone, and she has gone completely silent on that. 2. The night she stopped texting, I got home late from my second job, and I think that may have made her mad. I texted her good night at 11:50, and it shows that she read it but never responded, and since then she hasn't texted me. I am a very emotionally attached man, and she is too. She is very happy to see me in person but has on multiple occasions expressed her distaste for texting. She says that she doesn't like not being able to see the other person / know what they are doing, and I get that, so for the past few weeks I have compromised and we have barely texted once a day. Mostly just saying goodnight to each other, and while I do hate it, I am perfectly fine as long as she is happy. This is our second time being away from each other for an extended period of time, and she knows how lonely I get. I need physical touch, which I can't have on breaks, and that's fine. But if I can't give her hugs or hold her hand, I want to be able to talk to her. And she won't talk to me. I know she's not in the hospital or any kind of danger because of my dad being friends with her dad and filling me in, and I honestly am thinking I did something wrong. I'm thinking about all the things I could have done, and I'm lost. I just don't know what to do. I am slowly losing my mind and I need help. I'll take any advice you'll got. Please be brutally honestly. I, 24F, got catfished by my BFs, 25M, X. He got defensive when I wanted to talk to her for closure. He now also has a female friend. That is making me feel extremely insecure. Please guide me on how I should proceed. My boyfriend, 25M, and I, 24F, have been in a long-distance relationship for more than a year now. We have gotten into occasional arguments but still love each other a lot. However, I am having doubts about this relationship right now and need guidance. For some context, when we first started dating, he had just broken up with his ex of 8 years. I didn't want to be a rebound, so we talked about it and eventually decided to continue the relationship. A month after being official, I saw his Instagram profile picture was still of him and his ex. He even had her name with a heart on his profile bio, among other unrelated stuff. I assumed that he didn't use Instagram, so he never updated it. Later on, I found out that he had edited his profile bio, but her name and picture were still there. I confronted him about it, and he revealed that he was still not over her. They also used to talk on the phone and text a lot, which I knew about but thought nothing of. We had a whole conversation about it and moved on from it. He unfollowed his ex, deleted their pictures, and everything went back to normal. Our love for each other grew each day and we got closer. He flew over multiple times to my country to see me. We had always been transparent about who we were talking to and whether boundaries were in place. A couple weeks ago, his ex catfished me. She wanted to see how we were doing and probably even see if I would cheat on him. We found out eventually and he confronted her about it in person. She got embarrassed and that was that. I couldn't stop thinking about it and felt like her ex and I needed closure so that we all could move on. When I told him that I felt like I should contact her, he got really defensive and made me promise him that I won't message her. He said that she might try to stir things up and he didn't want any more drama. I agreed and never texted her. Fast forward to now, he has a female friend who leaves when she gets in a relationship and re-enters his life when she's single. I had to leave for a week so we couldn't talk as much on the phone. He was lonely and he told me he missed me, then mentioned how this female friend was spending time with him and that he appreciated it. She bought him a sweater for Christmas. And she also bought gloves. He joked about how it was cold at his work. She even got food at his workplace during lunch break. He has mentioned multiple times before that she is pretty. I was fine with their friendship, but now it feels weird. His ex also didn't like this girl, but TBF. She was jealous of all the girls he talked to. I'm so overwhelmed with everything. As much as I trust him, I can't help but overthink. Given how defensive he got when I mentioned wanting to talk to his ex, it's just suspicious. Secondly, I told him I needed a break to think and that this female friend was making me insecure. His reply was, "I'm sorry she made you feel that way and I did too. Not my intention. Maybe I am just overreacting about everything. I love him a lot and I know he loves me a lot too. But everything is so hard to deal with. How should I proceed?" He ended things with me today. I 27F have been talking to this guy 28M for a month and a half, and today he ended things with me. He lives a few houses down from me, so I see him often. He got out of a long-term 7-month relationship about 4 months ago. She 29F left him in what he says was completely out of the blue. He hadn't seen her until about a week ago when he went to a friend's place to pick up a present, and she happened to be there. He said he realized he's still not over her and wants to end things with me because it's not fair to me. I asked him if he started talking to her again, and he said no, that there's no chance at all that they'll talk or get back together again. However, they do share the same social circle, so he will likely run into her again at some point. I also asked why he's feeling this way now. He said it's because the other girls he dated before me were casual, but with me, things were becoming more serious. I suggested that maybe we could keep things casual, but he said he couldn't do that with me because he would want to have a proper relationship with me. So, I told him to let me know if he ever wants to try again, and he told me not to wait for him. I'm so confused and don't understand what is happening. What does this even mean? And what do I do? He constantly tells me I'm the nicest girl he's ever met and that I'm so pretty. The entire time, it felt like he was crazy about me, and now all of a sudden, this? I honestly don't have much of a normal dating experience at all, so I don't understand any of this. Please help shed some insight. Why, if he knows he's not over someone, would he get involved with me? How can seeing someone he's never going to be involved with again trigger him to end things with me? I also asked if maybe he wasn't feeling it with me, and he said no, it's just that he's not over her and thinks he needs to be alone for a while. So then, why not keep it casual until he's ready? I do not understand. I feel stuck in a relationship with my 17FGF and me 19M. 19M, and my girlfriend, 17F, have been together for 2 years. We've kept our relationship a secret, meeting only when she got off school early or on her free days. Fast forward to now, she's graduated, and we haven't seen each other for about 2 months because school was our only excuse to meet. During this time apart, I've been feeling emotionally disconnected. I don't feel the same excitement about the relationship anymore. It all feels so dull. And to make things worse, her parents told her today that they don't want her dating anyone right now, that she shouldn't even think about having a boyfriend. Hearing this crushed me because, at the end of the day, I do love her. But part of me feels like this might be the sign to end things. The problem is, I don't want to hurt her. Breaking up would mean crushing her dreams and goals, taking away her happiness, her appetite for life, and that absolutely breaks me. But at the same time, I don't know if I can keep going in a relationship like this. I feel lost and need some advice. What should I do? Started to dislike guy I'm seeing? Hello. So I 23/F started dating this guy 24/M. He's very nice and everything, but I feel like he's not as affectionate as me. He told me I should take things slow with that, so I stopped being as affectionate, which is fine. Something I notice is that every time we see each other we have sex, and even he booked a vacation, of course I paid my part. And he mentioned after that when he went on vacation with a friend of his, this friend was the one who helped the most out of everyone he had gone on vacation with, even though I had helped a lot on vacation. Like, do you want me to do everything? He also makes fun of me for a lot of stuff. When I tell him about this, he says it is because I have Asperger's and take things too literally, but still I feel like he jokes a lot about stuff I told him I don't like. He mentioned that when we go out, I should leave the tips, and he pays, or he won't take me out anymore. I feel like this might be weird. Not only that, but he also always plans things last minute with me, but after work he has activities with friends, birthdays, etc., and tells me that BC he's doing a master's, that he's busy, and explained to me many times that he has a busy schedule, which I understand, but I still would like for him to plan something, you know. He also told me many times that he's going to make me better because I'm very immature, which I kind of understand, but I also want someone which I can joke with and that loves me for who I am. He also told me to not get too overdressed if we go out, because he doesn't appreciate those things and that I look better without makeup. He's a good guy, but these things about him really annoy me, and he doesn't seem to notice because we have such different lifestyles. I'm more of a homebody. What should I do? I think I resent my dad. I don't even know where to begin with my emotions. This is going to be a long rant. So sorry. For starters, my dad and my mother had a pretty rocky relationship. Cheating, lies, verbal abuse, everything. He never hit us, and I was well aware he had a temper, but I didn't really care because I was a daddy's girl and I figured everyone did, and unfortunately he just got the short end of the stick because he's a scary-looking guy. I can't really get into a lot of the things he did because I've one, probably blocked everything out by now, and two, could write a whole book. But one of the most painful moments was when my siblings and I visited. He ended up screaming and cussing in our faces about how we love and appreciate our mom's side and completely neglect him. Mind you, I'm around 8 or 9, and sat us down and told us a secret, that she cheated on him and that's why they aren't together. That she's the bad guy, which to him she often was. The conversation ended up in mounds of tears, snot and puffy eyes. After that day, we all looked at her with a somewhat slanted view, until we eventually told her years later, which she confessed to us the truth, that they broke up shortly after my sister was born because he was actually the one caught cheating with someone very close to my mom in our family home. This, aside from the constant verbal abuse, pointless lecturing, and yelling, I ended up resenting him. He and family would even blame our lack of a relationship on that fact. I don't call and ask to see how he's doing. I never got many calls and I was 9. Our relationship eventually completely died out, to not talking for almost the entire course of high school. I'm graduating this new year. My grandma keeps making an effort to invite him where he doesn't belong, and it makes us very upset and uncomfortable. Even sacrificing her ticket to my brother's graduation for hers without even asking. These types of scenarios have recently been popular with her. Like today we went out shopping and he randomly appeared, which sparked this rant. I understand completely, but I can't find it in my heart. Be absolved of everything he did, because it still hurts. He has been texting me recently and even acknowledged and apologized for being a shit father. However, I just can't help but to keep going back to the thoughts of how much more meaningful would it have been to 13-year-old me when her dad didn't tell her happy birthday. I'm glad he's changed now, truly. He has a lot going for him and even a new woman in his life, hopefully better than the past ones. I feel terrible trying to cut ties. He's getting older and probably feels an awful amount of remorse that he's trying to make up for. But deep down, I don't want anything to do with him. I just wish he would forget about my siblings, about me, because I don't want to hurt him or torture myself anymore. There's a void in my chest that won't leave, and I can't keep crying over this shit lol. Anyways, so sorry for the long post again, but I need to know, is it okay for me to just cut him off completely and spare myself the attempts he's making? Possible abusive relationship or just anger issues? Hi guys, I, F24, just moved to a new state and started dating this guy, M27, for about 2 months. I like him a lot and have developed feelings quickly. However, I've had a bad feeling since the beginning and have noticed a few things that may be red flags. For starters, he asked me to be his girlfriend during our third date, which was odd. I asked why, and he would initially give reasons like, I want people to know I have a girlfriend. I'm leaving for a week and I don't want you to see other people. I feel lonely, which sounded awful, but then we cleared things and he explained that he was referring mostly to be exclusive. A few dates later, he said he loves me. He barely knew me, I kept insisting. Somehow his explanations made me consider that he might have feeling it for real. He also introduced me to his family pretty quickly during Thanksgiving. Anyway, it all felt as if he'd been love bombing me. But then the worst part came when he yelled at me twice and at my dog once, for no apparent reason. He would claim that it was due to stress and that he grew up used to yelling, that his dad had serious anger issues which has improved, and that he does have some too. But yesterday he was yelling awfully to his dad, and I had told him that if he did again, I would not continue with him. I broke up with him and he asked for his stuff I had back. I told him I left his bag at the front door of my building. He asked me to pick it up, otherwise that he would call the police. He then asked for the Christmas gift he gave me, otherwise he would report it as stolen. This reaction really scared me. Then after picking his stuff I didn't spoke to him and went back fast inside the door. He left and started texting me for another chance, that he loves me more than anything, etc. Also, he tends to have more controlling attitudes, which I have attributed to him being more conservative and traditional. But now I'm not so sure. Example. I told him once that I was still friends with my ex and he was okay. Weeks later he was overreacting about not wanting me to talk to him, otherwise he would have to break up with me. I know it's easy from the inside to create excuses for unacceptable behaviors. But could I be overreacting, or am I just being stupid and I should leave ASAP? Navigating financial strain of spouses, dad asking for money, we're 40M and 36F with 2 kids. 4. And just trying to build up our wealth after buying a home last year. Things are fine in that arena, all things considered. Recently, her dad, 60M, has been asking for money 3 times in 2 months after not hearing him need any financial help for the prior 5 years. $500 for energy bills or $300 for food is being sent now. It's tough. Her dad is nice and all, but this is a strain. I worry about consistently having to fund this man's weekly or monthly budget. I'm not seeing a scenario where things get better for him anytime soon. He's a capable chiropractor who's just made bad bets in life. How do I handle this situation? I'm fond of the man as a person, but I see the torpedoes this presents as we try to stay afloat ourselves in a HCOL area, to cover my ass a bit. Yes, we can help him as family should. We're here for legitimate support. But I'm worried about a new trend and precedent being set. My goal would be short-term help that communicates he needs to step it up versus relying on us, and increasingly so. Am I just being an asshole? She wants to stay casual. I'm worried my feelings will grow. What should I do? I am 37, just got out of a 9.5-year relationship 8 months ago with my fiancée, F34. While I really loved her and really wanted a family with her, I was suffering from ED and didn't tell her about it and was taking medication to help. The meds didn't help at all, without her knowing. She found out about it all and lost trust in me, and we never recovered. After a lot of pain and healing work I did with a therapist, I realized that I was relying on her to make me happy, and now that I was alone, all my unresolved issues came bubbling up to the surface. About 2 months ago, I was working with a client and she, F33, told me she had feelings for me. She as well was in the middle of leaving her long-term partner. While they had been broken up for about 2 months, she was still living with him but was in the process of looking for a place to move out to and will be moving out in 2.5 weeks. While it started out really hot and heavy, she was clear with me that she wasn't looking for anything serious while she was figuring stuff out with her ex. I too initially didn't want anything serious, but I did the thing I always do and started imagining something more serious happening between us. I never put any pressure on her, and was fine with keeping things casual for the moment. She also did tell me that she wants to explore dating women. And initially when she told me that, I thought we were doomed because she'll want to get that out of her system before settling down with me, if that's what she wants at all. She told me this afternoon that she has gone in a couple of dates with a woman but has decided that it's all too much for her and she wants to stop seeing us both. But she did say that she was happy to get the occasional drink and make out session, but understood if that wasn't for me. I was hoping this community could help me get my thoughts straight a bit. Therapist is on leave. While I think seeing her occasionally is good practice for me to build some emotional boundaries, I'm worried that if I see her more, I'll develop more intense feelings for her. I can't cut and run completely though, because we still interact together on a professional basis, but that will likely be ending in a couple of months. I think I do need to just move on. But I'm struggling with it because I don't want to be alone, and I clearly need to keep working on not needing the validation of a woman. It bothers me, 27M, when my cousin, 19M, doesn't respond to my texts. I'm 27 and my cousin is 19. I texted him Merry Christmas on Christmas and he never responded. I text him every now and then just to say what's up and to try to spark up a conversation, but sometimes he doesn't respond. He claimed one time that he never got my message. He is my little cousin. He is the son of my mom's brother. I do get a little upset when he ignores my texts. Am I expecting too much? I need help telling my friend Reddit. So, my friend, female 23, has a boyfriend, male 21. They are in a poly relationship because she wanted it, because they had an online friend that wanted to date my friend, female 23, which worked for a bit, but then a fallout happened. But now her boyfriend, male 21 soon to be 22 in February, likes her IRL best friend and vice versa, and they openly talk about it with her in the room. She has been venting about this for a while, and my friend, Fem 23, IRL best friend, has a boyfriend. I need help telling her that this was a problem started when she asked for a poly relationship. I, 27M, meet a girl, 31F, and want to be in a relationship with her. Hello. I am 27M, a foreigner living in the Middle East and traveled alone for a getaway into Azerbaijan. During my stay, I had one tour guide, 31F, from show around to show me the country with her driver. Most of the time I was with her during coffee breaks, lunch, dinner, and including some tour activities. It is clear to me that we have a very similar characters and have matching targets in life. She is also so kind-hearted and I liked her so much. After we finished the trip, I sent her a message to see if she was single or not and if she was also interested in me. She replied that she agreed we have very similar personalities, but she is old. Not an issue for me. And now speaking to someone seriously. I couldn't stop thinking about her. Part of me thinks that she rejected me because of the age difference. Should ask her again and explain that I don't have any issue with the age difference? Appreciate your advice. Should I call it off with my boyfriend? So, I, 27F, and my boyfriend, 27M, have been dating for 3 years. We genuinely love each other and I would really love to marry him someday. He's a collection of green flags even when we fight. And I've had a history of toxic relationships, so this one has really taught me how healthy relationships are supposed to be. When we started dating, we both connected on the fact that we didn't want children. I have always wanted to adopt and not have kids of my own for personal reasons, and he's not very keen on adoption either. But he's willing to give it a thought further on in our lives. We've had nuanced, mature conversations about the same, and we're happy with whatever we've reached. However, ever since I turned 27, for some reason I can't explain, the idea of having a child of my own doesn't seem bad to me. It's like a switch that has been flipped. It's been a few months since I've been feeling this way. When I talked to him about it, he was a little disappointed because it was something we decided on earlier, and it's a huge life decision that I'm changing all of a sudden. He's still been very understanding of the fact that these decisions do change over the years. After some thinking, he's decided we can continue dating and we can cross that bridge when we come to it. He doesn't feel like discussing it any further and changes the topic when I bring it up. I've talked to my best friend about it and she told me it basically boils down to what I want more, since I genuinely love this man a lot. I'm very confused. Ick, what to do. It's also the fact that it's only been a few months since I've changed my opinion on childbirth, and what if it changes again? This sudden mindset shift has made me question a lot of decisions in my life. On one hand, this is a man that I'm sure is my soulmate. He's understanding and everything I've ever wanted in a man, and on the other hand, it's this thing that we can't really reach a common ground on. My friends are divided. Some of them say I should go with the flow, while others think it's better to call it off now rather than doing it later if things don't work out. So what should I do? Sanity check before I do something I regret. Background: I am/28 met a girl F/28 online, and we started off friendly but quickly escalated to feelings and a relationship. It's fairly fresh, only dating for 3 months and known each other for 4. I had no interest in her at first because we live in different countries. But I couldn't deny my feelings. I've never been good with women, but she was different. It was the natural connection where there was no awkwardness, just great chemistry. We have similar values and life goals. All in all, she's the only girl I've ever considered a potential lifelong partner. We have started talking about plans to close the distance, of course, but that may not be for another year, at least due to her school. But I'm completely committed to trying to make it work because she's that special to me. The issue: she has done things that I consider crossing boundaries. For more context, she is very religious and is saving herself for marriage, so she hasn't done anything like that with anyone. But she has gone out with a previous match on a dating app. She says it was friendly and part of a group though. Like any woman, she gets attention and harassment from men, but she has always adamantly hated it, and it was something we bonded over since I've been harassed by women. Recently, she told me 2 critical things. 1, her ex, who was borderline abusive, randomly texts her and wants to meet with her. She denies him, and I asked her a few times after if she still had contact with him and says no. But now she reveals she did meet him. She still has no interest in him, but her feelings were conflicted before meeting. 2, a guy at her work flirted with her and wanted to give her a ride home. She denied him but still gave him her number. To me, these are things that a partner should never do. But am I overthinking it? She's moving to a different country for school, so she won't really meet those men, but my mind keeps thinking more men will flirted with her and she will give her number to someone. Is there a chance she is naive and not really seeing the error here? And before someone asks, I did address this early on when she went out with the dating app match and when her ex texted her. Initially, I firmly stated I didn't like it, it was my boundary, and that I didn't want her to communicate with them. She agreed at the time, of course, so just feels like she lied the entire time. I will talk to her, of course, but I'm trying to let my emotions settle before I do so I don't become irritational or upset. BF 24M was horrible in the first 6 months of our relationship, and we broke up. Months later, he comes back a changed man. 24F, he was instantly super infatuated and in love with me. We rushed quickly into the relationship without really getting to know each other. He was not a provider, had no job or stable income, and I caught him micro-cheating, being flirty with other women online. I left him, of course, but for months he's been trying to get me back. After he got exposed for the online stuff, he shared every passcode with me, shared his location, and deleted his social medias without me asking. Months later, and he hasn't changed a single thing, even though he knows I've already opened my other options up and even been on a couple dates with other guys. I have a certain standard, and I can't see a future with a man who can't provide. He now has 2 jobs and he's working very hard day and night, and he tells me that he's going to give me everything I've ever wanted. He bought me many gifts for Christmas, and he's planning dates for the future that I've always wanted in the beginning. I do care and love him, but I'm afraid of getting hurt again. Even though he's working so hard for me, the trust was still broken. Are we able to rebuild it? Was he unfaithful because he knew he had no money, therefore he was insecure? Can a man really change for the woman he truly loves? Is it worth it to give this another chance now? Edit. I'm a successful businesswoman in my own life. I have way more than him, and I feel that's what triggered his insecurity. The only thing that stops me and scares me from going back is the unfaithfulness part. But if he's working so hard now and makes money, and he wants to spend it all on me, should I even worry about that stuff in the past anymore? I want him back. 38M, but I'm stuck. Advice needed. I am 18F. Hey guys, I 18F met a guy, 38M, online, and even though there's an age gap, we really connected. We talked every single day when we first met, sharing so much about our lives. After 8 months of this, we even started planning to meet in real life. But then things just fell apart. I don't even understand how. He stopped caring, stopped prioritizing me, and became hot and cold. We broke up several times during the relationship, 4 or 5 times. And he always came back before. But this time, he seems done. I also asked him to show himself, a photo or video, but he refused. It's so frustrating because I feel like I gave so much, but I wasn't getting what I needed in return. Maybe he was just too busy with work or didn't have the emotional capacity for a relationship. Despite all of this, I can't stop thinking about him. I really saw a future with him, but he's making it so hard. I don't know why I can't let go, and I'm stuck between wanting him back and needing closure. How do I fix this? If it's not fixable, how do I get him to show himself so I can get some closure? My 22F girlfriend, 22F, ignores me whenever we have a disagreement. She says I'm playing the victim and goes to sleep with no intention of fixing things. I'm getting tired and feel like it's destroying my mental health. What do? I have a relationship of 1 year and 6 months with my girlfriend. I'm a woman too. We meet at university and study the same career, and it has been a very lovingly and intense relationship, but whenever we have some kind of disagreement, as example, she explicitly has said she doesn't my family even when I said my family is incredibly important to me. She just straight up ignores me, says very mean things like, I'm playing the victim, and I'm not doing enough, goes to sleep and then wakes up like nothing happened. One thing important is, we both have been having insecurities on ourselves for quite a long time. I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety since I was 12, got therapy, and I was dealing very well with that until the beginning of this year, February 2024, where I lost my grandfather, my house, and my pets in a wildfire. It really hit me hard, since I never thought that I would lose my grandpa and pets that way. As I said, family and my pets are a very big reason of my happiness. Even so, my girlfriend would get mad at me whenever she saw me crying and or talking about that day. For her part, she has been dealing with insecurities about her body and anxiety as well, and since the beginning of our relationship, she would often compare our bodies, say she doesn't deserve anything, threatening to cut her skin. I have been always supporting her, even when she said things that hurted me. I tell her we can go to the gym together, eat healthier, go to the doctor to do a general check so we can get started to fix her migraines and stuff, but she doesn't want to. Also, we live from 1 hour from each other, and I always have to go to her house, even when I'm sick or incredibly tired from her work, and if I tell her that, she gets upset and ignores me again. In university, she gives up easily in every assignment, saying she is tired and doesn't want to do anything. So to help her, at first I would do some small parts of her projects, but lately I have been doing the 70% of her uni work, and even when I tell her she should do her part, because it's her responsibility, she either does it for 15 minutes and then gives up because it's so hard, or says I'm being mean to her and treating her like she's irresponsible and lazy. Another thing, whenever I tell her we can watch something or play something together, she says she is not really interested, but if her twin sister wants to watch or play the same thing, she immediately accepts. And that makes me feel like she enjoys doing things more with her sister than me. All that and more things have been making me feel horrible about myself, like I'm not doing enough like a girlfriend, like a person. She gets angrier at every little thing I do, and I feel like I'm walking on eggshells sometimes, being so careful of every word, every action, or even the expression of my face just to not annoy her. I'm not a saint. I really try to do my best at understanding her limits and actions, and the most hurtful words I have said to her is that she should do her own university projects because I get tired too. I really feel like I do bad things to her even when I know she has been very mean and unfair to me. She says the only way to show her love to me is through gifts, and she really gives me a lot of things, which I really love. Every gesture of her I have saved in my bedroom, but her actions and words really says otherwise. So, I just really don't know what to do. This is affecting my mental health so badly. I have even been thinking about hurting myself. Any advice? Please, sad face. Can we share, friends? I've 44F been with my GF 43F for 3 years. We have introduced each other to friends and family, and everyone seems to get along. The problem is, every time I speak to one of her friends, she gets upset if I don't tell her. The last situation was me sending Merry Christmas texts to people I met through her. I didn't tell her, and when she heard from them that we had correspondence, she was upset. I didn't think it was a big deal and definitely not a secret, so I don't understand her issue with this. I am not even corresponding with her friends regularly, not even monthly. I've noticed that she can correspond with my family and never mention it, but I'm okay with that. Do I need to report every time I speak to someone she knows? Feels controlling to me. How should I deal with this? My mom neglects my younger siblings but guilt trips me for living my own life? I'm 24F and the oldest of 4. My parents divorced 2 years ago, but their marriage was chaotic long before that. From ages 12 to 17, my mom treated me and my sister, 22F, like her therapists, venting nonstop about my dad and their marriage, and focusing on bickering with my dad versus raising us, so I had to step in and regulate. During one of their fights, my dad hit her. I was told to call the police, and he never lived with us again. I was 17 at the time of this separation. Since the divorce, my dad's tried to stay involved. He's currently working and recovering from cancer. He had to take a leave of absence from work during treatment, which reduced his child support. He is cancer-free now. He is living with his mom currently, though, so he doesn't control his housing environments. Therefore, I don't know if my siblings can live there. It's also far, and my siblings are planted where they are in community activities. School. He says he wants to reconnect, but our relationship is strained. Growing up, my mom built an alliance with us against him to feel less alone, leaving us with a biased view of him. Now she says she's always wanted her children to have a good relationship with him, but there's no acknowledgement/accountability of the messy dynamic she created. My dad hasn't apologized for the past, and I don't think he knows the full extent of what's happening with my siblings and mom, detailed below. Meanwhile, my mom has only gotten worse. She was diagnosed with MS about 10 years ago, and I don't know how. This affects her, in addition to menopause and unhealed trauma, has become even more controlling, manipulative, and guilt-trippy toward her children versus a husband. She's extremely religious and more focused on whether I'm sinning, e.g., sleeping in the same room as my boyfriend when I tell her we're traveling somewhere, than actually taking care of my younger siblings, 16M and 12F. She doesn't work, doesn't have money, and barely feeds/hydrates them. My siblings hate living with her. They dread summers and holiday breaks, because she's always yelling, forcing staged happy family photos to send out, and just projecting her misery onto them. My mom refuses to let me take them out to give them a break when I visit, saying, I'm their parent. I can take them out. My sister, 22F, who also lives at home but has made it clear she won't be a second mom to them, and she doesn't even have the resources to do so. She deserves to live her own life. But my siblings have no other support system. They're stuck. We've called CPS on my mom several times, but she always cries to the officers, promises she's working on it, and blames my dad's reduced child support for the lack of household essentials. Even though she spends it on unrelated things, she constantly watches YouTube videos promising that God will send her $10,000 in 10 days because it was done for others who documented their experience for the internet. My mom's mom, my grandmother, often calls me or my sister to guilt us into working with her or staying involved to support my mother. I don't think long-term my siblings and I will be in communication with her or will take care of her later in life if she keeps this up. This all weighs on me heavily. Since moving far away for college in 2018 and never returning, I have worked hard to build a peaceful, successful life for myself. I'm now focused on building a long-term relationship with my boyfriend. We're no longer long distance after 2.5 years. But my mom keeps trying to guilt-trip me in seemingly every situation about not prioritizing her/family. For example, I texted her happy birthday instead of calling because I was moving that week, and she got mad that I didn't call to chat. She also got mad at my sister for getting her a cake with her name on it instead of mom, because she couldn't send it out to people for attention. Honestly, I think she's bitter and jealous that I am focusing on my happiness and not following her path. Marrying young at 22 or clinging to religion or a cheating man. It's not her fault my dad treated her poorly, but I've learned from growing up in a chaotic environment what not to do. I started therapy this year, finally, and probably need to go back next year to figure out how to continue to regulate/cope. I've been thinking about going no contact, but I feel stuck because of my younger siblings. They don't deserve this, they didn't ask to be here. I'm pretty sure my parents had them to fix their marriage, but look how that turned out. They need their mom, but she's focused on keeping up a fake PR image, making sure my sister and I aren't sinning, instead of actually parenting her children. Now my therapist tells me to forgive myself for the things I felt like I had to do. Everyone deserves peace for sure, including my mom, but this is a mess and it's not mine to clean up. Going out of my mind in my marriage. I am 37 and so is hubby. No kids. Married for 13 years. UK, I have serious anxiety issues around health and those close to me getting in accidents. He is very introverted. We both work full-time. Live far from our families. He doesn't emotionally get me at all and I don't think he ever has. He's not cheated either and I know this 100%. I've done a lot of the emotional labor and organizing in our relationship and I think he takes it all for granted. He likes me to start conversations etc. and even though he's great at DIY I have to tell him to do it. Lots of things like that. We weren't intimate for 5 years and he didn't think to mention it despite telling me he has a high drive and had to do it himself. I've asked him repeatedly to just let me know if he is gay but he denies it. He does think he's maybe ASC though. I have completely lost my desire for it with him. We were last intimate last summer and he wouldn't stop going on about how much he loved it. A month ago I moved into the spare room. He was teary when I suggested it but despite saying he doesn't like it he's again not done anything about it. Our house has jobs to do spanning years again he doesn't do anything unless I ask. I had a breakdown in 2019 after a health scare and while he practically looked after me for 6 weeks, he left me alone for most of it sobbing in my bed. He said later he didn't know what to do. He's also told me being in the spare room has made him feel more distant. I had another time 2 weeks ago where I said I was sick of my life and sick of being taken for granted. He said he'd try and help but he's just gone back to the same unromantic likes to go and do his own thing. I had a death in the family where he hugged me for an hour and that was it. He's got better at doing things around the house and does more housework than me at the moment due to my mental health. When I tell him I'm unhappy he responds by saying how much more he practically does than other spouses but I keep telling him it's the emotional support. He seems to think that as long as he practically helps out and gets me nice gifts and brings me cups of tea in the morning and such he's a good husband but I've been telling him how unhappy I am and how I want to move closer to my family as we've been in his city forever but I get a no. He wants kids but does nothing to get that ball rolling adoption or otherwise so again. He says he passionately wants something but does nothing about it. I've spent so much time looking after this man and we get on as roommates and have a lot in common but I just don't see a future. He's a kind, intelligent man who is successful in his field and in his artistic pursuits as well as helping me with my mental health. He's been very, very patient. I've told him my love language is words and touch but nothing. The weirdest part is my friends and family think he's the sweetest guy and tell me they can tell he loves me but I'm not sure I believe it tbh. I wish with all my heart he could be romantic and emotionally connected but it just smacks of him not giving a fig about me and taking me for granted. I've stayed so long in part because I'm not the type to give up and I believe you should work at things and also because of my faith I wouldn't be able to remarry if I did divorce. Has anyone got any advice? I've thought about a trial separation but we'd be living together during it due to money and no family living nearby. Thank you for reading. Is my relationship really as bad as my PMDD convinces me it is? Throwaway. Sorry this post is going to be very long but I have no one to talk to about this and need help. My BF, 35M, and I, 29F, have been together for 4 years. 2 of them we have lived together. I love my BF for his kind, thoughtful, and really sweet demeanor. We generally work well together and are the same type of weird. There are some things that have happened since we moved in together, though, that have given me doubts about our relationship. I have been diagnosed with PMDD, and every month these doubts rear their ugly head and convince me I'm in the wrong relationship. The thoughts are so convincing and always center on the same things, of which I will explain below. I need outsider perspective so I can be more objective about my thoughts. The first thing I discovered that made me feel doubtful is that he has dismissive avoidant attachment style, and I have anxious attachment style. Classic combo, A. His dismissive avoidant attachment affects his personality in a plethora of ways, but the main ways are, he values space and privacy so much he believes he needs his own room instead of sharing one. He refuses to talk about the future in anything but extremely vague terms. More on this later. He actively avoids conflict and will not communicate his needs, something that he even admitted was the problem of his last relationship. And he does not like to be touched, also more on this later. Once I realized he has this attachment style, I have put in a lot of work reading about it and trying to understand how to best communicate with him. I understand he cannot change and have no desire to change him, but I also feel that some of my anxious needs are ignored in the process of me understanding his attachment style. Stemming from this, I've tried to discuss our future plans with him on multiple occasions and always end up with the same, "You know I want to be with you," or "someday," which frustrates me so much. I approached the marriage talk very casually, after reading about how to talk to dismissive avoidance, about 6 months ago, asking if he saw us getting married. He first hit me with a bunch of red flags like, marriage is just a piece of paper, and I hadn't really thought of it, but then he turned the question on me and asked what I was thinking of. I poured my heart out to him and told him he was the first and only person that I ever thought about marriage with. When I looked over, he was crying happy tears and seemed excited to plan a proposal for me. It has been 6 months since that talk and he hasn't said a single word about marriage to me. I told myself I would not say anything again until he did, and I've been faithful to that. But as you can imagine, that means that now there is no talk of it at all. I know that avoidants are reluctant to commit, so how would I know if he really does want to marry me or not? I don't want to guess. Next, I mentioned that he has a problem with being touched. When I say this, I mean he doesn't like his face tenderly touched, which I used to gently do when I was admiring him, or any part of him except his hand. He will physically flinch and get irritated if I try to touch him. I stopped touching him because I thought maybe he had been abused and only do it if he says it's okay. I'm not sure if this is a part of him being avoidant, but he also has an extremely low libido. It steadily has gotten worse and worse as time has gone on, and my thoughts during certain times of the month hyperfixate on this. He knew his libido was getting worse when we first moved in. The second he asked me to move in with him, his libido dropped insanely fast, and he used to apologize all the time for it. I would see him try his hardest to keep up with mine, but he just couldn't. After many discussions, I just decided to let him take the reins and initiate sex, and now I just masturbate when I feel the need. I used to try and initiate and he would reject me every time. I also tried to see if it was me, which he claims it's not. Now our sex life is so depleted we have sex once a month, sometimes only once every 2 months. It hurts to think of this because I crave the connection that comes with sex, but he doesn't see sex that way. All of this makes me feel wholly awful when my hormones act up, but I don't feel so terrible when they're not. Even though I struggle with some things my BF does, he is also the most incredibly kind and thoughtful man I ever met. He's always planning sweet surprises for me. He spoils me, he makes me feel loved in other ways. He shows me off to friends and family. He puts me first and always includes me in every event he goes to or hobby he picks up. And I'm proud to be his girlfriend. Am I overthinking things? Is my PMDD making things more insane than they actually are? I kick. My fiancé passed away 5 months ago now. I have feelings for an old friend. I 35F lost my fiancé 47M 5 months ago. I loved him so much and it was very sudden. I started talking to an old friend 50M again, who I have honestly had a crush on forever but never acted on because I was afraid of rejection. I realized I was still very attracted to him. Then as time went by, I realized I'm happy when I'm around him. I haven't been happy in so long, since my fiancé died. He makes me feel so safe and comfortable. I'm just worried that it's too soon. He's made it clear he feels the same way about me. We were intimate tonight and I'm worried it's too soon even though it feels so right. The last thing I want to do is hurt this wonderful man. I could really use some advice. Difficulty talking to my family about my relationship? Does anyone else have problems talking to their family about the relationship they're in? I've, 27F, been seeing this guy, 30M, for a year next week, and they haven't even technically met him yet. When we first went on a few dates, my mom didn't even question it, whereas his family asked him questions about me and how things were going. They've really included me into their lives, but I feel like mine hasn't at all. There's been a problem in my last relationships as well. I'm currently living at home with my mom. Now he's just bought a house and his family has wondered if I'll be moving in with him. Mine doesn't even bat an eye about it. Even when trying to talk to my mom about the relationship in general, she seems uninterested and sometimes changes the subject. I'm having a hard time learning how to navigate progressing a relationship and taking the next steps in life when dealing with this. It's always felt like my mom's never been able to have deeper conversations with me about life. It's always just superficial stuff. My 20F, BF, 22M is buying me the same underwear he bought his ex. How do I mention this to him without either of us getting upset? Me and my boyfriend have been dating for around 8 months. At the start of the relationship, he seemed to mention his ex Jenna, who he was with for 4 years, quite frequently. Offhandedly, as he was scrolling through Instagram, he clicks on an account which sells different types of merchandise. He scrolls down to a picture of a woman in lingerie and mentions that he's bought these before, but not for him. Considering Jenna is his only ex, it didn't take a lot of reading between the lines to see what he was getting at. Fast forward to a couple days ago where he says he's bought something for me. Immediately, I'm pretty certain it's the underwear, as he's mentioned it a couple times in passing since the aforementioned incident. He asks if I want to see what he'll be buying me now, and I say no, uninterested. This morning he shows me a picture of the exact same underwear he purchased for his ex. Obviously, I'm going to mention this to him, as to me it seems insulting, but he seems to be sensitive regarding his ex. What's the best way to approach this matter without either of us getting upset? BF Micro cheated throughout our relationships. Hello. I have been conflicted for a few months about what to do about this situation. I'm 35 weeks pregnant, struggling, and very emotional. So I'll try to keep it as simple and understandable as possible. I, 23F, am pregnant with my BFS, 26M, baby. Now, before this relationship, I was in one from age 16 to 21 where I got cheated on multiple times, including having sex with other girls in the beginning of our relationship. I struggled tremendously for years with forgiving and forgetting in this situation, but I don't think I really got over it. For context, in that 16 to 21 relationship, I was very open and very much the chill girlfriend. The guy I was with at the time talked openly about girls he found attractive, what kind of porn he liked, and what his type was. Tall, blonde, and big boobs / but this was something I basically accepted, mainly because he was honest about it really. Long story short, that relationship ended and I made a deal with myself that I would never let myself be a second choice like that, and that in my next relationship I would like to be the person's actual type, given they had one. Then I met the man I'm with now. Sweet, loving, and I assumed loyal, although a little controlling regarding stuff like what I post / where / who I'm with. No male friend hangouts, for example. We talked about boundaries from the start, and what is / isn't cheating. This is what we basically have always said was cheating in the relationship. 1. Flirting with others. 2. Watching porn, which he's the one that's mainly against. 3. Looking at others with intense / NSFW thoughts. Lusting after them basically. 4. Looking up people from our past / that we have done anything with. 5. The obvious physical stuff in general, just basic respect and loyalty. Both physical and mental. Now, before I found out, I had the infamous gut feeling that there was something he hadn't told me / wasn't truthful about / was hiding. I asked him if I could go through his phone, and what I found made nauseous. It wasn't even porn immo, it was worse. Here it is. First, a few months earlier I saw on his Snapchat that in his relationship before me, he had flirted with another girl on Snapchat and received nudes / flirted and talked about finding a time where she could come by. Not anything to do with me, but still a red flag, as I think it says a lot about a man's character. So, when we were sitting together and I went through the phone, 1. Messages from both just before we became a couple to a few months earlier, and some from before / during his previous relationship, where he basically mentions the same 7 to 9 girls and how they would be an exception no matter what, they're just his type, and other things like that. 2. A few weeks before he asked me to be his GF, he wrote to his friend that I was dirty, hot, gave 10 out of 10 head, but the body wasn't his type. This made me extremely sad. especially because all of the other girls were blonde and petite. I'm brunette and lifted weights. 2 to 3 months after our relationship started, he was out drinking with one of his friends. I didn't suspect anything and have always, despite everything, trusted what people said, and he wrote to me every 15 to 20 minutes, said that he missed me, loved me, and was excited to come home. I have never been used to this either. In the relationship before, it wasn't uncommon for us to not have contact for up to a week sometimes. Now, what he told me that night when he came home, 2 to 3 hours later than he had planned, was that there were 2 girls that came up to them, sat with them, and played a few games/talked with them. I saw the messages that he had sent his friend while he was texting me. He wrote that, "Fuck, I would like to come on her face," and then what made me even more sad was that just after that he wrote, "But I have ex and I love her so fucking much," which tells me that he had been thinking of me and writing to me while talking/flirting with this girl. Oh, he also wrote that if he was single he would have taken her. Edit. The day after this, he wrote to his friend that, "I can't remember anything from last night. I'm so nervous about what she has gotten out of me for." On TT I saw that he had exclusively been watching videos of blonde petite girls, which I very much am not, especially pregnant. Some of them looked to be a maximum of 15 to 18 years old, and some of them were the ones he would make an exception for no matter what, and that he had described as his perfect type and done stuff with in the past, and yada yada yada. Scrolling through that basically made me feel like shit, and thinking of it still does. Other than that, there have been many smaller instances where he in general has been quite controlling/jealous himself. For example, I smoke weed occasionally. One time I was getting a migraine and I drove to a colleague because he could give me a pre-rolled, so I drove there, he got in, gave me the J, and walked out. Overall, an interaction of 3 minutes max. My boyfriend also has my location BTW, so he could literally see it. This made him extremely angry, jealous, and untrusting. We had multiple fights about this. There have been other small things too, but the point is, multiple lines have been crossed. I also noticed that the videos on TT, for example, weren't just from that week. It had been a consistent thing he did for over a year, and also some of the most recent videos were posted just a week before I saw, etc. He has said to my face throughout the whole relationship that he loves me, doesn't use social media, doesn't use TikTok, thinks it's disgusting that his friend looked up an ex while in a relationship, told me he'd never do anything like that to me, that I'm the most beautiful girl in the world and the whole shebang, and I feel like I want to cry anytime he says something like that now. I don't know if I'm just being hormonal, but we made a deal that X and Y counts as cheating, and he did it. I feel betrayed. I feel disgusting. I feel sad all the time, and I can't stop seeing the girls I found in his phone and comparing myself to them. I can't look at myself in the mirror for more than a couple of seconds, especially being pregnant where everything now is bigger. I told him while we were talking too that if this had happened 9 months ago, I would not have dropped BC. If I would have left him, but I definitely wouldn't have gotten pregnant. And that is something I have such a hard time thinking about, because I am going to love this baby with all of my heart. But I thought that I got pregnant on a foundation of trust, openness, and love, and now it feels as though he is an entirely different person. I worked so hard to build trust for him, and now that I finally did, it hurts so much that it feels like all of that has been destroyed. I grew up with 2 parents that should have separated long before they did, for other reasons. So I also always said that I would rather be single, happy, and a good mom than in a relationship that isn't worth it, one way or another. On the other hand, I am also just so confused because I really truly love him, and because of the pregnancy I have become so extremely attached to him, and I want us to be a family. What should I do? My fiancé didn't want kids at the wedding, not even my daughter. But when I arrived at the venue, I saw her 2 kids and 6 nieces and nephews. I just laughed in her face and told her the wedding was off. I'm 38, and I was supposed to marry Addison, 40, earlier this week. We'd been together for 3 years and engaged for 6 months. Everything was fine until the engagement. Then, issues started when we began discussing the guest list. I wanted my daughter, who's 14, to attend. Addison firmly insisted there were to be no kids at the wedding. This was strange, especially since she has 2 kids from a previous marriage and is very close to her 6 nieces and nephews. Most of our guests were parents, so I didn't understand her stance. We argued about it, but I eventually agreed, as long as her kids and nieces and nephews also weren't invited. Addison stuck to her decision. She claimed she wanted a stress-free wedding and didn't want to upset anyone with kids by making exceptions. Although it bothered me, I relented because she seemed so adamant, and it was a small wedding in my parents' backyard. Thought the kids wouldn't miss much. Everything changed a couple of days before the wedding. While at work, I got an email from Addison's younger sister, Kate. It included pictures of Kate's daughters in wedding outfits, asking for approval. I was confused until I realized the email had been sent to the joint wedding account Addison and I used. Kate must have sent it by mistake. I quickly took screenshots before the email disappeared. Sure enough, minutes later, Addison deleted it. I was furious. She'd planned to bring her kids and nieces and nephews despite telling everyone it was a child-free wedding. That evening, I didn't confront her. I pretended nothing had happened. At first, she seemed nervous, likely suspecting I'd seen the email, but when I didn't bring it up, she acted normal. 2 days before the wedding, I decided to talk to my daughter. I wanted to check how she felt about Addison because I was already having doubts. Thankfully, I did. My daughter revealed that while Addison was kind to her before the engagement, her attitude changed afterward. Addison began ignoring her when I wasn't around. Since I have my daughter for half the month, this was a significant amount of time. My daughter didn't tell me sooner because she didn't want to ruin my happiness. But when Addison excluded her from the wedding, she felt it was a sign she wasn't wanted in my life anymore. Hearing this broke my heart. I realized I'd let Addison manipulate me into sidelining my own child. That was the moment I decided the wedding was off. I confronted Addison the day before the wedding. I told my parents to let her know I'd see her on the wedding day. Instead of spending the evening at home, I spent it with my daughter, trying to make up for lost time. By the end of the day, we both felt much better. The next morning, I went to my parents' house, where the ceremony was supposed to take place. Some guests, including Addison's parents and sisters, had already arrived. To my surprise, all 6 of her nieces and nephews and her 2 kids, everyone under 12, were running around the place. When Addison saw me, she rushed over, likely to start explaining, but I cut her off. When Addison saw me, she hurried to the door and started explaining. She said she'd told Kate and Amelia that it was a child-free wedding, but they couldn't leave their kids at home. She also mentioned her parents thought it would be strange to have a wedding without her own children present. She rambled on with excuses, clearly thinking I was angry. I didn't interrupt until she finished. Then she noticed how I was dressed and started asking why I wasn't in my wedding clothes, where I'd been the night before, and so on. I just laughed in her face, pulled out my phone, and showed her the screenshot of Kate's email, the one she'd accidentally sent to our joint wedding account. Addison went silent. She knew she was caught, and there was no way to talk her way out of it. She started apologizing, but it was far too late. At that moment, I decided to tell her what I'd done the day before. I told her I'd spent the day with my daughter and learned how she'd been treating her since we got engaged. I didn't want an explanation. I just said we were done. I made it clear that I wasn't going to marry someone who didn't value my daughter. It hurt because I'd never treated her kids any differently than my own, but it was obvious that neither I nor my family meant anything to her. I didn't wait for her response. I turned around, got in my car, and drove back to the hotel. Later that day, I woke up from a long nap to find countless messages from our wedding guests. Friends and family were confused, and Addison's parents were furious. I briefly explained the situation to my friends and family and left it at that. I visited my daughter and told her I'd canceled the wedding. I also promised to spend more time with her. Over the last few months, we'd grown distant without realizing it. Before, she would always come to me if there was an issue. The fact that she hadn't this time showed me how much I'd failed her. We both got emotional, but it felt good to reconnect. It's been 5 days since the wedding was supposed to happen, and now almost everyone knows why I canceled it. It wasn't just Addison's treatment of my daughter, it was also her dishonesty. For me, honesty is a cornerstone of any relationship. I've been lied to and cheated on before, and I know it always starts with small lies. This was a huge lie, and she thought she could get away with it. That's why I don't regret canceling the wedding, even at the last minute. Some might think it was dramatic, but I think it was fair. She planned to spring this kids at the wedding thing on me at the last minute, so I did the same with the cancellation. That said, her family is furious. They think I was unfair because I didn't give her a chance to explain herself. Addison, along with her family, has been messaging me nonstop. Her defense? She claims she couldn't outright ask me not to invite my daughter but had her reasons. She also said it's insulting that after all these years, I didn't think our relationship deserved at least a conversation before ending it. She refuses to explain her reasons over text and says she'll only do it in person. Honestly, I can't imagine what kind of explanation would justify her excluding my daughter from our wedding. From what I know, there was never an issue between Addison and my daughter. Sure, I could have confronted her the day I found out, but I doubt it would have changed much. I still would have talked to my daughter, and I probably still would have canceled the wedding. Given how close it was to the date, the abruptness of the cancellation wouldn't have been much different. This subreddit is about wedding frustrations, so I'd love to hear, what would you have done in my shoes? Has anyone else canceled their wedding at the last minute, and why? Update 1. It's been 3 days since my original post, and I'm still staying at the hotel. Today, I contacted Addison and told her she needs to move out of the house as soon as possible. After all, it's my house. I lived there before she moved in, so I think it's only fair that she be the one to leave now that we're done. I've given her until the end of the month to find a new place. In the meantime, I'll be staying with a friend, as staying in a hotel long-term isn't sustainable. I'm feeling much better about my decisions. My friends have reassured me that I made the right choice by prioritizing what's most important. Being a father. I don't feel guilty about putting my daughter first. If someone has a problem with that, they don't need to be in my life. I won't apologize for choosing her. As for Addison's reasons for excluding my daughter, I honestly don't care anymore. If she can't explain them, then I don't need to hear them. At this point, I don't even want to see her. I've also blocked her parents and sisters because they were clearly aware of her plan and didn't warn me. That's deeply disappointing, especially since I thought I had a good relationship with them. I genuinely felt like I'd become part of their family. At least, that's what I believed until all of this happened. So far, I haven't responded to Addison, but last night I told her she needed to find a new place to live. I also made it clear that if she wanted to explain her reasons, she could, but it didn't matter anymore. The damage was done, and nothing she said would change things between us. That's all I had to say, and I haven't heard back from her since. For those wondering, no, I still don't know what caused Addison to change so drastically toward my daughter. I've talked to my daughter about it because I'm curious, but she doesn't know either. She told me she was just as shocked when Addison started acting differently. My daughter even tried to rebuild their relationship in the early stages after the engagement, but Addison stayed cold and indifferent to all her efforts. If anything, the issue seems to have been Addison herself. Based on what I've learned from my daughter, Addison is the one who changed. I know some kids struggle when their parents move on, but trust me, my daughter isn't one of them. To give some context, my daughter's mother and I were never married. We were together for 2 years before having her, but we broke up when she was 3 years old. My daughter barely remembers us as a couple. Besides, her mom has been remarried for 5 years now, so there's no lingering tension between us. I know for a fact that my decision to move forward and marry Addison didn't bother my daughter. They used to have a great relationship until recently. I'm not saying my daughter is perfect, although to me she is, but I know she's not a liar. She especially wouldn't lie about something like this. She knows how much I value honesty and transparency, so I trust her completely when it comes to this situation. Ultimately, it doesn't matter if Addison ever tells me her reasons. It's clear she doesn't plan to be honest about what's going on. She hasn't replied to my message, and I find that strange. She's always glued to her phone since she works from home, and her job requires her to stay active on it. Normally, she responds immediately. So, I'm pretty sure she's seen my message and is choosing to ignore me. But honestly, it doesn't matter. All I want is for her to leave my house so I can return and live comfortably again. This hotel situation is far from ideal, and I'll need to go back to work in a couple of days. Update 2. It's been 3 days since I messaged Addison, and today she finally responded. She said she understood why I didn't want to see her in person but insisted it was extremely important for us to meet, so she could explain her reasons for not wanting my daughter at the wedding. Addison claimed this was to ensure I didn't misinterpret her actions, even though we're already separated. She also said she didn't want to be seen as the bad guy because, according to her, her reasons were valid, and she never meant to hurt me. That last part felt ridiculous, considering her actions had already caused significant damage. I replied and made it very clear that I wouldn't meet her in person. I told her that whatever she needed to say could be done via text, and that was the end of it. About an hour later, she sent another message explaining her reasoning. According to Addison, the reason she didn't want my daughter at the wedding was because of something that happened during our engagement party. On the day of the party, my daughter wasn't feeling well. It was my time to have her that month, and I already knew she wasn't 100%. I told her she could stay in her room if she preferred, but she said she didn't want to miss the party, especially since it was being held at our house. Even though she felt unwell, she chose to attend for a little while. After I gave a toast, she excused herself and went back to her room. Naturally, some guests asked about her, but it wasn't a big deal. Apparently, Addison saw things differently. She claimed my daughter stole the spotlight by leaving the party. Addison said she went upstairs to check on her and overheard her laughing and talking on the phone with a friend. To Addison, this meant my daughter wasn't really sick and was pretending to avoid the party. Rather than addressing this with me or my daughter, Addison vented to her sisters, who have a reputation for stirring up drama. What could have been a simple misunderstanding spiraled into a major issue. After that, Addison started distancing herself from my daughter, convincing herself that my daughter secretly resented our engagement and might cause problems in the future. When I read this, I was disgusted. The fact that such a minor, misinterpreted incident led to Addison treating my daughter differently was beyond absurd. I didn't even bother responding to her. Instead, I spoke to my daughter about what Addison had told me. My daughter confirmed she had been talking to a friend on the phone after going upstairs that day. She explained that just because she was laughing and talking didn't mean she felt less sick. It's a perfectly reasonable point. Feeling unwell doesn't mean you can't talk or laugh with someone. Addison's reasoning was flimsy at best. It seems to me that she was insecure from the start and used this trivial incident as an excuse to stop pretending to care about my daughter. Reflecting on our relationship, I've realized there were other red flags. Addison often complained about not getting enough of my attention, especially when my daughter was around. While she showed patience and care with her own kids, she didn't extend the same effort to my daughter. She also had a subtle way of keeping me preoccupied emotionally and with tasks, so I didn't notice how she was isolating me from my daughter. I never connected the dots because I was too invested in the relationship, but now I see how manipulative she was. I'm so grateful I ended things when I did. If staying with Addison meant sacrificing my relationship with my daughter, then it was never worth it. When I received Addison's message explaining her reasoning, I briefly considered responding to tell her exactly how ridiculous and petty she was for letting something so small ruin our relationship. But I quickly realized it wasn't worth my time or energy. For now, I've decided to ignore her until I absolutely have to see her again. Unfortunately, that might be sooner than I'd like because I need to return home to grab my clothes for work. I just hope she finds a place to live soon. While my friends have generously offered to let me stay with them, I'm eager to return to my house and put this whole chapter behind me. Update 3. 2 days after my last post, I went home to grab my clothes and a few other things. I had to move out of the hotel because it was getting too expensive. On my way to a friend's house, I decided to stop by and pick up what I needed. Since I had blocked Addison after her last message, she had no way of knowing I was coming. I figured it was a gamble, but I went for it. Unfortunately, Addison was home when I arrived. She looked upset to see me and clearly wanted to talk. I focused on gathering my belongings as quickly as possible, thinking the faster I finished, the sooner I could leave. However, she didn't make it easy for me to get my things. As I was about to leave, I told her she needed to find a new place to stay so I could move back into the house as soon as possible. I started walking to my car, but she followed me, talking the entire time. She apologized profusely for everything she'd done. She admitted she shouldn't have lied to me and should have been honest from the start instead of blowing the engagement party incident out of proportion. Addison admitted that she had been immature and exaggerated something so minor. She also said her sisters had played a big role in convincing her it was a bigger deal than it actually was. Recently, she'd even had a fight with them because she realized their advice had inadvertently ruined our relationship. That piqued my curiosity, so I asked her what she thought would happen when I showed up at the wedding and saw kids there but not my daughter. Addison said she expected I'd marry her anyway because, in her words, our love should have been stronger than that. I told her that if she truly loved me, she wouldn't have put me in a position where I had to choose between her and my daughter. At that point, she was practically begging for a second chance. Addison promised she would make things work this time, both with me and with my daughter. Hearing that saddened me because it was far too little, far too late. As I reached my car, I told her I understood how she felt, but that this wasn't easy for me either. I explained that walking away from our relationship hadn't been simple, but I had to do it because nothing was more important to me than my daughter. I owed it to her to do the right thing. I could see that Addison was on the verge of tears, and I really didn't want to deal with that. I said a quick goodbye, reminded her to look for a new place, and left. I felt a little like a jerk for handling it that way because seeing her in person was much harder than just messaging her. But it had to be done, and I don't regret it. For now, I'm staying with a friend while I wait for Addison to find a new place. Hopefully, in a couple of weeks, she'll have moved out, and I can start rebuilding my life. I know it'll take some time to recover from all of this, but I'm confident I made the right decision. The one silver lining in this whole mess is how much stronger my relationship with my daughter has become. We're back to where we were before the engagement. She's opening up to me about everything, and there are no secrets between us. Feels great. Today we FaceTimed, and she was so excited talking about her day at school. In that moment, I knew all the stress and heartbreak had been worth it. We're even planning a beach trip in a few weeks. I've invited a couple of my friends with kids her age to join us because I think we both need a break and some fun after the chaos of these past few weeks. It's going to take time, but I'm optimistic about what's ahead. Update 4. Sometimes you don't realize the kind of bullet you dodged until some time has passed. Let me explain what I mean. A friend of mine, who's a lawyer, advised me to serve Addison with a formal eviction notice. Partly to ensure everything was handled legally and partly because it had been nearly 2 weeks since I asked her to move out, and she hadn't made any progress. With my friend's help, I filed the notice. Unfortunately, in my jurisdiction, tenants are given 60 days to vacate the property, so there wasn't much I could do except wait. I could have moved back into the house, but I didn't want to live with her for 60 days, especially not after everything that happened. As it turns out, staying away was probably for the best because what ultimately happened was beyond anything I could have imagined. What Addison did to my house a few days after I served her the eviction notice. Addison trashed my house. Thankfully, the damage wasn't as bad as it could have been. Considering how furious she was, I honestly think she might have burned the place down if it weren't for my neighbor. A neighbor heard loud noises and called the police. When they arrived, they found the mess Addison had made and detained her. If not for that intervention, I'm sure she would have caused even more destruction. The good news is that the police escorted her out of the house, which effectively ended the eviction process. The damage she caused also served as proof for the legal action I took afterward. I sued her for all the damages. I recently won the lawsuit and am now waiting to collect the money she owes me. I've already repaired most of the damage to the house. If she refuses to pay, she'll face even more legal trouble for defying a court order. While the whole ordeal has been stressful, I feel incredibly relieved knowing I avoided a bigger disaster by not marrying her. If this is how she acted now, I can't imagine how much worse things could have been if we were legally tied through marriage. What's next for Addison? The last I heard about Addison, her ex-husband is seeking full custody of their children, using this incident as evidence against her. I'm not saying Addison is a bad mother, but I also can't blame her ex for wanting to keep their kids away from her after all of this. That said, I'm not particularly interested in what happens in her life going forward, unless it directly affects me or my daughter. I consider this chapter closed. Moving forward, this will likely be my final update regarding Addison. I've realized just how fortunate I was to get out when I did. This situation could have been much more expensive and complicated if we had gone through with the wedding. For now, I'm focused on rebuilding my life, my home, and my relationship with my daughter, which remains stronger than ever. My in-laws forced me to sign a prenuptial agreement before marrying their daughter. Now that I'm worth 5 times more than they are, they want to nullify it, even going so far as to file a false report against me. 8 years ago, my wife and I got married. Before the wedding, my in-laws decided I had to sign a prenup. At the time, I found it a bit insulting because they had already made it clear I wasn't really welcomed into their family. Signing the prenup felt like another blow. Back then, I worked in sales. A year into dating my wife, I decided to quit my job and start my own electronics brand. We were both 27 at the time, and when I officially launched my business, I was almost 28. My wife supported me throughout the process and was overjoyed when I began pursuing my dream. Her parents, however, weren't happy. They assumed I was living off their daughter's money. While she did support me to some extent since I didn't have a stable income yet, I wasn't entirely dependent on her. At 29, I proposed and we married within the year. But a few months before the wedding, her parents approached me with a prenuptial agreement. It stated that in the event of a divorce, all assets and finances would remain separate, and I couldn't claim anything of hers, and vice versa. Additionally, I would have to reimburse my wife and in-laws for any financial support they'd provided while I was building my business. This reminder of my supposed debt to them felt unnecessary. The prenup even included a clause that neither my wife nor I could claim each other's assets. If we ever had a joint account, the funds would be split according to who contributed more. Her parents assumed my wife would be the primary earner throughout our marriage. They told me signing the agreement was the only way they'd feel comfortable accepting me as their son-in-law. I found it deeply insulting for 2 reasons. First, they assumed I'd always depend on my wife and never succeed on my own, even though I was working hard to build my business. Second, they had disapproved of me from the start. When my wife introduced me to them, they believed I wasn't good enough, meaning not wealthy enough, for their daughter. For context, my in-laws run a successful real estate business and come from affluent families. My parents, on the other hand, had regular jobs. My dad was a high school football coach and my mom managed a local cafe. I didn't struggle financially growing up, but I didn't have the kind of wealth my in-laws were used to. Their disdain was clear from the start. Sarcastic comments, cruel jokes disguised as humor, and a generally condescending attitude. I stayed silent about it because I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of knowing they got under my skin. My wife often defended me, but I believed ignoring them was the best strategy. I knew my wife loved me and that was enough. Despite feeling insulted, I signed the prenup. My wife was offended when they presented it to us, but she signed it too, knowing their true intentions. They hoped to humiliate me before the wedding or scare me off altogether. But they failed. We got married and have remained a strong team ever since. Fast forward to today, my business has grown significantly. In the past 2 years, it experienced exponential growth thanks to effective social media marketing and hard work. Now I'm worth 5 times more than my in-laws. Suddenly, they want to dissolve the prenup. A few days ago, they visited us for dinner. After our child went to bed, they brought up the idea of nullifying the agreement, saying it was the right time to involve their lawyers. My wife and I were shocked. I refused, telling them they insisted on the prenup to feel secure about me joining their family, and I didn't want to take that away from them. They were clearly unhappy but tried to argue that times had changed. We now had a child, and there was no longer any reason to doubt me. Still, I stood my ground and said I wasn't willing to discuss it further. Their tone shifted, and they grew agitated. They said that since the prenup was their idea, I had to respect their wishes and dissolve it because they deemed it unnecessary now. They even claimed their age and experience gave them the right to make such decisions to prevent future issues. I had no idea what they were talking about. After some back and forth, I stated plainly that my wife and I weren't planning to divorce, so there was no need to revisit the prenup. I urged them to drop the matter, but they refused. The conversation escalated, and years of unresolved tension erupted. I pointed out that the prenup was designed not out of fairness, but to humiliate me and emphasize that I didn't belong in their social class. Now that I had surpassed them financially, they wanted to pretend the whole thing never happened. They countered by claiming it was only meant to protect their daughter from someone who might exploit her financially. The argument dragged on until I grew too exhausted to continue. I asked them to leave, citing the late hour and the fact that our loud disagreement could wake my sleeping son. I just wanted peace and quiet to process everything. They took offense, accusing me of being ungrateful. They argued that I wouldn't have achieved my current success without the support of their daughter and them. This was where I had to set the record straight. I acknowledged that they had occasionally sent money in the early days of my business, but that support was never for me. It was for their daughter. We could have managed without their help as I had savings, but my wife occasionally needed their financial assistance for her personal expenses. Emotionally, they never supported me. They never made me feel like part of the family, so I told them they had no right to claim credit for my success. This only made them angrier. They accused me of being disrespectful and dismissing their contributions. At one point, they even turned to my wife and demanded she choose between them and me. They claimed they had done everything possible to support our marriage but could no longer stand my ingratitude. Eventually, my wife managed to calm the situation and convince them to leave. She has stayed in contact with them since, trying to get them to apologize. I've told her I don't need an apology. I just want space. They can maintain a relationship with her and our child, but I have no interest in mending things with them after what happened. Recently, my wife shared something that made the situation even worse. While trying to reason with her parents, she discovered they were trying to manipulate her into divorcing me. She showed me their messages and I was furious. The messages claimed I didn't respect her family and, therefore, didn't truly love her. They suggested that my refusal to dissolve the prenup indicated I distrusted her, especially now that she had financial independence. They painted me as ungrateful and advised her to rethink our marriage before it was too late. Thankfully, my wife doesn't believe any of it, but she's exhausted from trying to make them see reason. The only point my wife somewhat agrees with is that, reluctantly, they did support us financially in the early days when I was starting my business and she was covering all our expenses. However, I don't feel the need to acknowledge that support because it was clearly done for their daughter, not for me. If my wife had let me, I would have used my savings to contribute back then, and we wouldn't have had to rely on them at all. Besides, they always made sure I felt unwelcome in the family, treating me as though I was only with her for the money. Now I wonder, am I the bad guy for refusing to thank my in-laws for supporting us when I was starting my business? Update 1. It's been a week since the argument with my in-laws. Based on what I've read so far, opinions about my situation seem divided. But I've already made a decision. I'm going to pay them back for all the financial support they've ever given us. I've calculated a rough figure and I want to settle the debt. I don't want to feel indebted to them or be constantly reminded of it. I've discussed this with my wife and she agrees it's a good idea. Her parents haven't stopped trying to convince her to divorce me, claiming I've disrespected them multiple times. This, despite the fact that they've never acknowledged how they've disrespected me and my family on numerous occasions. If they can't handle being treated the same way they've treated us for years, then they had no right to behave like that in the first place. Honestly, I was quite polite at the start, even when the argument escalated. But with them, it's always been outright hostility towards me and my family. They've never even pretended to like us. At this point, both my wife and I are drained from dealing with this situation. Hopefully, writing them a check will resolve everything. Normally, I don't believe throwing money at a relationship issue is the answer, but with them, it might be the only way. They're that materialistic and self-centered. I can't imagine other parents trying to ruin their own child's marriage, especially when a child is involved, just because their ego matters more than anything else. I'll keep you updated once we take this next step, but I hope it finally brings some peace to our lives. Update 2. Earlier today, my wife spoke with her parents and told them I was willing to write them a check to put an end to this entire situation because it's becoming exhausting for both of us. Since all of this originally started over money, we thought paying them back for everything they'd done for us in the past might resolve things. But of course, it didn't. Instead, they were offended at the mere suggestion that they could be bought. They told my wife that this was no longer about money, something that seems bizarre considering how they acted during our argument, where it clearly seemed to be about money. Now, all of a sudden, it's about the respect they claim I've never shown them. Honestly, I find this ridiculous because I could say the exact same thing about them. My wife. And I genuinely have no idea what they're even talking about. I've always been polite and civil toward them, while they've consistently had a bad attitude toward me. I've literally never disrespected them. Yet, they believe this one instance of me refusing to acknowledge their so-called support is somehow equivalent to the years of disrespect they've shown me and my family while exploiting my love for their daughter. It's not the same at all. Even my wife agrees at this point. Fortunately, they're not speaking to me directly anymore. They're only communicating through her. My wife is fully on my side, but they're still trying to manipulate her into divorcing me. Now, they've even started saying she needs to protect our child and begin taking steps toward gaining custody. It's absurd. I can't believe they're stooping so low. Trying to ruin our marriage wasn't enough for them. Now they want to drive a wedge between me and my child. And all of this is just for their own ego. Honestly, this behavior alone is enough for me to feel that they don't deserve any respect at all. This kind of treatment is what I've dealt with since the day I met my wife, and seeing them try to destroy our family like this only reinforces everything I've ever felt about them. I'm grateful that my wife is standing by me, but at this point, I don't see any way to move forward with them. Update 3. It's been a little over 2 weeks since the fight with my in-laws, and in the past few days, my wife has stopped responding to them. She feels it's a lost cause. She did everything she could to explain to her parents why they were wrong, but they kept insisting she should divorce me. She got tired of trying to fix the situation on her own, especially since they made it clear they weren't interested in reconciling. So, she stopped replying to them entirely. As a result, they decided to show up at our house today. I was the one who answered the door, but they completely ignored me, walking right past and calling for my wife. At this point, their behavior doesn't even surprise me anymore. After accusing me of being disrespectful, they continue to act like hypocrites. I didn't say anything and just waited for my wife to come out. When she did, she immediately told them she wasn't interested in speaking unless they were willing to acknowledge our perspective. Instead, they claimed they were there to confront her about her behavior, saying she was starting to act like me, becoming more disrespectful. They even went so far as to say that because I was in debt to them, she was too, and she shouldn't forget it. That's when my wife lost her patience and started yelling at them, and rightfully so. She told them she had never asked them to do anything for her, and that they had no right to hold it over her head since everything they did was by their own choice. If they hadn't wanted to help, they could have refused, and we would have made it work without their assistance. She pointed out that other parents help their children out of love, not to later use it as leverage as they've done. As for gratitude, she reminded them that we've always tried to be thankful and respectful despite their ridiculous behavior toward me and my family. We stayed silent for years to avoid drama and keep the peace. But now it's impossible to stay quiet. She told them respect isn't something that can be demanded, it's something that's earned, and they've done nothing to deserve it. The argument went on for a while. I stayed silent, not wanting to engage with them. Eventually, when my wife started getting more upset, I stepped in to calm her down. That's when my in-laws shifted their focus to me, blaming me for everything. They claimed it all started because I refused to dissolve the prenuptial agreement. I corrected them. I told them this didn't start with the prenup. It started when they decided to treat me poorly simply because I wasn't from the wealthy circle they expected their daughter's partner to come from. That's what's been bothering them all these years and why they've always mistreated me. I explained that I tolerated it for so long because I didn't want to cause unnecessary problems, but they needed to realize they couldn't keep getting away with it. That's why I refused to dissolve the prenup, because I'm not going to be their puppet. The situation got even more tense after that. They started shouting, saying awful things, and trying to provoke me, but I stayed calm, which only made them angrier. When they realized they couldn't get a reaction from me, they told my wife she had to choose between them and me. That's when my wife made her stance clear. She told them she was choosing her family, her husband and her child. She told her parents to leave our house and that they would receive the check soon, after which we'd be done with them. Her parents were visibly shocked. They clearly hadn't expected this reaction. They probably assumed they'd have another chance because that's how it's always worked in the past. But both my wife and I have had enough. When they tried to continue arguing, my wife threatened to call the police if they didn't leave immediately. Finally, they left, and since then, we've blocked them on all platforms. We're officially cutting them out of our lives. It's going to be difficult to explain to our child why he won't see his grandparents anymore. But thankfully, he has another set of loving grandparents in his life. Maybe reconciliation will be possible someday. But for now, this is the best path forward. We've tried everything to make things work with them, but it's clear they only want things to go their way, which is no longer an option. Honestly, I feel relieved. Both my wife and I stood up for ourselves, and it feels like a huge weight has been lifted off our shoulders. We're happy we faced the situation head-on. Update 4: After 2 months of no contact with my in-laws, my wife and I were trying to move on with our lives. However, things took a shocking and far more serious turn a couple of weeks ago. My in-laws filed a false report against me, accusing me of child abuse. I can't begin to describe the horror and disbelief I felt when Child Protective Services showed up at our door. As with any allegation of this nature, it was taken very seriously. CPS decided to temporarily remove my son from our home while they conducted their investigation. Those were the darkest days of my life. Watching them take my son away while I was powerless to stop it shattered me completely. He was crying, begging not to leave, screaming that he wanted to stay with his parents. There are no words to capture how devastating that moment was. Fortunately, the social workers conducted a thorough and fair investigation. They quickly realized the accusations were baseless. The bruises my in-laws mentioned in their report were the result of a fall my son had while playing, completely normal for a child his age. Doctors confirmed there were no signs of abuse or mistreatment. A few days ago, we finally got our son back. The relief we felt was overwhelming, but the anger runs just as deep. For our son, it was a traumatic experience. When he returned, he wouldn't let go of us and tearfully recounted how he told the social workers he just wanted to come home. I cannot believe my in-laws were capable of something so despicable, using their own grandson in their absurd vendetta against me. As if that weren't enough, this scandal has also hurt my business. Even though the allegations were proven false, the damage was done. News spreads fast, and my company's reputation has suffered. I've lost several important contracts, and some clients are questioning whether they want to continue working with me. Despite the truth being on my side, the stain left by these accusations isn't easily erased. It's infuriating because I've worked so hard to build my business, and now it's being jeopardized by their malicious actions. At this point, we're not letting this go. Filing a false report of this magnitude and taking a child from his parents is something we cannot and will not overlook. I've been consulting with my lawyer, who happens to have a friend specializing in cases involving defamation and false accusations. We believe we have a strong case to sue my in-laws for the personal and professional damages they've caused. This isn't just about me or my wife anymore. It's about what they did to my son. No child should have to endure what he went through. My wife fully supports taking legal action. After everything we've been through with her parents, this was the final straw. She's enraged and deeply disappointed in them. They've robbed her son of his peace and tried to destroy our marriage repeatedly. Despite the difficulties, my wife has stood firmly by my side. Now more than ever, we're united in our decision to see this through to the end. Update 5: After 9 long months of battling in court, I finally have good news to share. The journey has been exhausting and stressful, but it's been worth it. First, let me address my business. Despite the chaos of the past months, my company has managed to recover quite well. While it's not back to 100%, the fact that it's grown during such a challenging time is a positive sign. I'm optimistic that with time and continued hard work, it will return to where it should be. The loyalty of my most steadfast clients has been instrumental. While I lost some contracts, many others chose to stick with me, trusting that the truth would prevail. Now for the big news. We won the lawsuit against my in-laws. Words cannot fully express my satisfaction with the outcome. After everything they did, justice was on our side. The judge ruled in our favor, and my in-laws have been ordered to pay a hefty 6-figure settlement. So close to 7 figures that I know it will hit them hard. They'll likely have to sell their vacation home to cover the payment since they don't have that kind of cash readily available. The irony is that if they'd accepted the check I offered months ago, they would have been far better off. But their pride and need for control drove them to push too far, and now they're paying the price, literally. What could have ended peacefully and reasonably turned into a very expensive lesson for them. With this settlement, we'll recover the losses my business suffered and hopefully teach my in-laws to think twice before interfering in our lives again. Our son is also starting to heal from the ordeal. We've been taking him to therapy to help him process everything he went through. Thankfully, he's resilient, and we're doing everything we can to ensure he feels safe and loved. If there's a silver lining to all of this, it's that my in-laws will likely reconsider any future attempts to meddle with us. For now, my family is focused on moving forward, stronger and more united than ever. My family cut me out of their lives for exposing my sister's infidelity to her fiancé and his family. But now they come crawling back, asking for money because they need help. Yes, the same parents and sister who disowned me for revealing the scandal have now come begging for support. It's incredible the audacity they have. I'm still trying to process how bold they were to plead for assistance from the very person they abandoned and rejected. I guess that's what happens when karma knocks on your door. Before diving into the main event, here's some brief context. My sister Jess, 37, is undeniably the golden child and the center of attention for our parents. Meanwhile, I always felt like the unwanted one, as if my needs didn't matter. My parents invested everything into Jess's success, leaving me to fend for myself. Jess is beautiful, but her personality is questionable. She's always used her looks to get her way, and it was frustrating to watch. As a child, it was tolerable, but during our teenage years, she became a nightmare. She constantly manipulated me, treated me with disdain, and humiliated me in front of family and friends. The worst part? Nobody ever held her accountable. She couldn't stand me getting even the slightest attention and always found a way to steal the spotlight and make me look bad. It was exhausting to be around her. After high school, she wasted 2 years trying to decide what to do. Eventually, Dad got her into a design school without her lifting a finger. Meanwhile, I was told to study hard, apply for scholarships, and cover my own expenses. For Jess, our parents acted like personal ATMs. They even took out loans to fund her education, only for her to drop out halfway through. Despite this, she still managed to land paid internships and decent jobs, but she couldn't keep them for long. Either she got fired for her irregularities or quit because she couldn't adapt to the workplace. Eventually, she convinced Dad to buy her a boutique because she didn't want to work for anyone else. With minimal experience, she dropped out of college, but Dad still secured her a loan to set up a decent shop. Meanwhile, I was stuck working in cafes and tutoring to make ends meet. They always had money for Jess but were broke whenever I needed help. I even had to take out a student loan, which took me years to pay off. That double standard is what drove me away from my family. After high school, I moved out and rarely visited them. 7 years ago, during one of those rare visits, I went home for Christmas after 2.5 years because Mom insisted. By then, Jess had moved out and was running her boutique. She was engaged to a guy, a chemical engineer who seemed like a decent person and was, frankly, much better than my sister deserved. He was attractive, financially stable, and clearly infatuated with her. I couldn't understand what he saw in Jess, but I kept my curiosity to myself. Jess also seemed to have changed. She was warm and kind to me, probably to impress her fiancé. Jess invited me to visit her boutique, and I said I'd stop by when I was free. The next day, while walking near her store, I decided to check it out. The sign said closed, which seemed odd since it was 11 a.m. Pushed the door and it was open. Thinking she might be taking a break, I walked in and called her, but her phone was off. Then, I saw something that made my stomach churn. She was making out with a guy in the corner of the shop. At first, I thought it was her fiancé, so I apologized and started to leave. But then Jess noticed me and pushed the guy away. That's when I saw his face. It wasn't her fiancé. Shocked, I left, but Jess ran after me, asking me to stop. We stood in awkward silence until she finally broke it. "You're not going to tell anyone, right?" I stared at her in disbelief. Her excuse was even more disgusting. "It didn't mean anything. He's just a cute customer who came to buy lingerie for his girlfriend." I was stunned. She kept apologizing, saying, "He was too handsome to ignore. I'm so sorry. Let's just forget this happened." I asked her, "Why are you apologizing to me? Does your fiancé know about your little session? I'm sure this isn't an isolated incident." She swore it was the first time she had cheated on her fiancé, but I doubted it. All her past relationships ended because of her infidelity. She tried to convince me, begging me to keep quiet and not tell anyone. So I left, furious. I felt terrible for her fiancé, partly because I had been cheated on a month earlier. I absolutely despise cheaters, especially those as despicable as my sister. Maybe I was projecting, but I felt a deep empathy for Jay's fiancé. When I got home, I couldn't hold it in. I told my mother what I had witnessed at the store. To my surprise, she brushed it off and told me to stay quiet. Her argument: "Jay is getting married in a couple of months. You can't ruin this for her." Wait a minute. I'm not ruining anything. Your daughter ruined it by sneaking around in the store. Do you have any thoughts about that? I asked. She dismissed me, saying, "It's her life, her decision. We shouldn't interfere." Of course, it's her life, but she's cheating on her fiancé, and my mom was enabling her. She was more worried about losing a wealthy son-in-law and the lavish wedding she could flaunt to friends and family. They wanted me to cover for her, passing it off as a one-time mistake. But I knew it wasn't. I was furious, not just at the infidelity, but also at my parents' attitude. They didn't even try to talk sense into Jess. Jess texted me, asking, "We're good, right?" I replied, "No, we're not, until you tell your fiancé the truth." She rushed over to my parents' house to confront me. At first, she repeated that it was a one-time mistake and that I should let it go. When I refused, she became aggressive, yelling, "What's your problem? Why do you care? Why are you meddling?" I stood my ground and pushed her to confess to her fiancé. Things escalated into a shouting match between us. My parents sided with Jess, asking me to stay out of her business. The situation turned so toxic that I stormed out of the house. I wanted to leave immediately, but my flight wasn't until the next morning. So, I wandered the neighborhood to cool down. When I returned in the afternoon, I found Jess sitting with her fiancé and his parents. I greeted everyone and was about to retreat to my room, but her fiancé invited me to join them. Jess and my parents looked uncomfortable. Jess tried to excuse me, saying I had a flight to catch and needed to pack. Her fiancé's parents were kind, asking about where I lived and what I did for work. Jess, desperate to steer the conversation, made a joke to ease her nerves. "Oh, don't worry. You're the first people who have ever cared about her life. She just has a normal job. Not everyone can run a business like I do. Right, honey?" She kissed her fiancé. I was about to let it slide, but her words infuriated me. I snapped, "Yeah, that's true. Not everyone has the luck to own a boutique and sleep with their clients." I hadn't literally seen Jess with a client, but in my anger, the words spilled out. You can imagine the tension. The room fell silent. My mom broke it by laughing nervously. "You scared everyone with your dark humor," she said, trying to brush it off. Jess and my parents joined in awkward laughter, but the others looked confused. I turned to Jess's fiancé, smiled and said, "Yes, my humor is dark and very truthful." Then I walked to my room. Jess's fiancé followed me into the hallway, asking, "What do you mean?" Jess ran after him, insisting it was just a joke. Ignoring her, he pressed me for the truth. I froze, realizing I was about to open Pandora's box. But then I looked at their faces and said, "It wasn't a joke." Jess erupted, accusing me of being jealous because she was marrying a wonderful man while my ex had dumped me. Stunned by her venom, I lost control and told her fiancé everything I had seen. He was furious. Jess denied it, claiming I was making it up out of spite. The commotion drew everyone to the room. My mom joined Jess in attacking me. "Please ignore her," she told Jess's fiancé. "She's been through a hard time and now sees cheaters everywhere. You know Jess would never do such a thing, right?" I was shocked. My own mother was making me out to be delusional. Thankfully, her fiancé wasn't naive. He demanded Jess's phone. She clung to it, but he snatched it and forced her to unlock it. The evidence was all there. Flirty texts, sexting, even nudes. He threw the engagement ring at her and stormed out with his parents. Smart move, considering the ring looked expensive. Jess fell to her knees, begging him not to call off the wedding, chasing after him and his parents outside. The fallout was brutal. My mom slapped me across the face before I could even speak. "Get out. You're dead to us. Don't you dare show your face here again. You are no longer our daughter." I looked at my dad for support, but he shook his head in disgust and walked away silently. I didn't cry. I stared straight at my mom and said, "I'll never come back to this hell." I packed my things and left. Jess tried to stop me, screaming that I had ruined her life. I pushed past her and left. That night, I stayed at the airport. I blocked all their numbers and deleted their contacts. Since then, I haven't spoken to any of them. Yesterday, Jess and my mom showed up unexpectedly. But to keep this short, I'll summarize. They were in a difficult situation. Jess's life had completely fallen apart. Her boutique had gone bankrupt, and she was struggling to make ends meet. My parents were also in ruin, drowning in debt because my dad had been battling a terrible illness and was unable to do much. They came crawling back, asking for my help. I shut the door in their faces and didn't let them in. I feel satisfied with my decision, but part of me still worries about my dad. Do you think I should help him, given that he's been hit hard by illness? Update 1. Thank you all for your advice. Here's a detailed update. I was feeling uneasy after receiving mixed responses to my previous post, so I reached out to my aunt, my dad's sister, who lives a block away from my parents. I've maintained moderate contact with her since moving out. My aunt usually keeps me informed about the drama at home. A while ago, she mentioned that my dad felt guilty about mistreating me and wanted to make amends, but my mom, still blindly loyal to Jess, discouraged him. My dad, being a peacemaker, likely didn't want to disrupt the household by reaching out to me. She also told me that after Jess's infidelity came to light, my dad stopped paying the boutique's mortgage. By then, he had already covered more than half of it. He asked Jess to pay the remaining amount, but she failed, and the property went into foreclosure. Obviously, she couldn't reclaim it. Karma truly works in mysterious ways. After her breakup, Jess quickly latched onto another sponsor to sustain her luxurious lifestyle. But, surprise, surprise, her lies caught up with her and he left her as well. Meanwhile, my mom continued to support Jess, refusing to hold her accountable for her mistakes. She had benefited from what Jess received from her boyfriends and my dad's money for years. Now, with my dad sick and unable to work, they don't even care about him. Feels like karma has come full circle. My dad never supported me or stood by my side, so I told myself I wouldn't feel bad for him now. He made his bed, and now he has to lie in it. A month later, I found out that my mom had left my dad in a rundown hospital. They had defaulted on their insurance for over a year, so the coverage had drastically reduced. Now they had to cover a significant portion of the surgery costs themselves. My mom either couldn't or didn't want to pay for it. I felt awful. I couldn't bring myself to let him suffer and possibly die while I had the means to help. So I went to see him. When he saw me, he broke down in tears, hugged me, and apologized repeatedly. He told me that my mom hadn't visited him once since dropping him off at the hospital. I took him out of that place, admitted him to a decent healthcare facility, and covered his treatment expenses. Somehow, my mom and Jess found out and showed up at the hospital. But to my surprise, my dad stood his ground. He threw my mom out and told her that once he recovered, he would deal with her. Jess kept her distance, but my mom tried to talk to me, thanking me for stepping up. I ignored her completely, pretending she didn't exist. 3 weeks ago, my dad was discharged and is now on the mend. I check in on him occasionally, but I keep my distance emotionally. I told him that I felt obligated to help because he raised me, but he shouldn't expect anything more from me. I made it clear that I didn't want ongoing contact. To his credit, he respects my boundaries and has expressed a desire to work on our relationship, but at my pace. I'm still figuring out how I feel about that. That's all for now. I'll update if anything significant happens. Update 2. As my dad promised, the first thing he did after recovering was leave my mom. He secretly sold the house, which was under his name, packed his belongings into an RV, and left without a word. At the time, my mom was visiting Jess in another city, so she had no idea. When she returned and found him gone, she panicked and went to file a missing person report. However, after investigating, the authorities concluded that my dad had left voluntarily, so no report was filed. Left with no place to stay, my mom turned to Jess for help. But Jess was living in her boyfriend's house and couldn't take her in. Naturally, my mom came looking for me. The moment I opened the door, she started crying and apologizing. I let her in, mostly because I live in an apartment and didn't want her creating a scene for the neighbors. She recounted everything I just mentioned and then some. I asked her, "So what? Why me? What happened to your golden child? Why isn't she supporting you?" She started sobbing, saying Jess was struggling financially. Her boutique had closed due to supply shortages. She had no money for inventory, couldn't pay the mortgage, and everything fell apart. Jess was barely getting by herself and couldn't take care of my mom. "So that's why you came to my door," I said. "The daughter you never supported and always resented. Why isn't your favorite child helping you?" She quickly defended herself. "Dear, it was your father who chose to support Jess financially. Her boutique, her education, everything. Yet you still paid for his treatment. I've always treated you both equally. Why such bitter words? For me, if it's about that slap, I'm truly sorry. You have no idea how humiliated we were after Jess's wedding was called off. I never supported Jess's infidelity. I just wanted you to stay silent until the wedding. But that's all in the past. Please, forgive your mother." I told her there was no need to justify anything to me. I explained that I paid for my dad's treatment because it was my decision, just like it was my decision not to help her. I made it clear that I wasn't comfortable talking to her and that she should leave and not come back. She left, apologizing the whole time. Later, I heard that my mom had found a job at a salon. Well, good for her. She's finally realizing the importance of standing on her own feet. A few days ago, I learned that Jess had been kicked out by her boyfriend after being caught cheating again. Once a cheater, always a cheater. She turned to my mom for help, but this time my mom threw her out. My mom is currently living in a friend's garage, which has been converted into a makeshift room. So Jess had no help to count on. Apparently, my mom lashed out at Jess, blaming her for everything. My dad leaving, me hating them, and their current misery. Jess then called me from a new number, crying and begging me to intervene. I hung up before she could finish her sentence and immediately blocked the number. After that, she sent me a long, emotional email. She blamed my mom for enabling her toxic behavior, saying, "I wasn't born this way. Our parents made me this way. Why didn't they teach me morals and values? They gave me everything on a silver platter, and now they've abandoned me to fend for myself. How unfair is that? They could have taught me self-reliance like they taught you. If you think I've had it easy because of their favoritism, you're wrong. Look at my life now compared to yours. I still rely on others, jumping from one person to another, while you've built something for yourself. Please help me put my life back together. I'm begging you. Her email was moving, wasn't it? So what do you think I did? That's right. I deleted it and blocked her. I know how manipulative she is. How else do you think? She convinces rich men to give her money? Sure, her looks help, but she's also good with words and maybe other things too. I don't care. Not about her, my mom, or even my dad. I paid for his surgery because I felt I owed him for bringing me into this world. That's it. I've endured immense mental torment because of them, and it took me years to heal. There's no way I'm letting them disrupt my peace again. Update 3. A dose of karma in full force. A few days ago, I got another call from an unknown number. At first, I wasn't going to answer, but something told me I should. Note to self: stop trusting my instincts. On the other end, I heard my mom's broken voice. Without even saying hello, she started crying and recounting how she and Jess had ended up living in her friend's garage. Apparently, things had gotten even worse. Now the two of them are sleeping together on the cold, damp garage floor, with just a mattress for comfort. Mom began complaining about their living conditions, saying the garage is freezing and uncomfortable. They're sharing a small space crammed with rusty tools and dusty boxes. We have no privacy, and we can't even take a decent shower. We're living like beggars, she sobbed. My response: and this is my problem because? Mom kept trying to guilt-trip me. She told me she couldn't stand seeing Jess in such a state, that Jess was her daughter, and she had failed to protect her. Your sister is depressed. She has nowhere to go, and we have no one else to help us, she said, her tone pleading. I did my best to stay calm. Here was my mom, the same woman who had favored Jess over me my entire life, coming to me, the daughter she had always sidelined, asking for help to fix everything. She continued begging, saying they only needed a safe place to stay, even if it was temporary, just until they could get back on their feet. I responded coldly: it seems like you're finally experiencing what it's like to rely on others and get absolutely nothing in return. Maybe this will teach you a lesson in humility. No, Mom, I'm not going to help. You both deserve this. Mom went silent for a moment, then started pleading again. She admitted to making mistakes, saying that Jess understood her own as well. She asked for one last favor. Please, daughter, we messed up, but we need help. I don't want your sister to stay in this horrible situation. As a mother, I'm begging you. I replied with the same coldness. I'm glad you're finally learning what it feels like to suffer. Unfortunately, I'm not your savior. I don't care what happens to you or Jess. You lived at my expense for years, and now that you need something, I'm not available. You'll have to find another way to survive. Before she could say anything else, I hung up and blocked the number. Yes, I heard her sobbing throughout the call. And yes, I found it amusing. Call me petty, I don't care. After everything they put me through, I feel like I earned this moment. I have no regrets. They chose their path and now they're paying the price. Let them enjoy their life in the garage, because they don't have any other options. As for me, I'm finally at peace knowing I did the right thing by cutting them out of my life. End of story for now. The karma keeps working its magic. I'll be sure to keep you updated. Update 4. A hidden truth revealed. First of all, thank you to everyone who has commented and shared your own stories of favoritism. Reading your experiences made me realize something important. When one child is treated differently, there's often a deeper, hidden reason behind it. A pattern that, sadly, repeats itself in many families. What struck me the most was how several of you mentioned that favoritism in your cases was the result of infidelity in the past. This made me reflect on my own situation and start questioning the real reason behind the resentment my parents always seemed to have toward me. Recently, while my dad was visiting the area, I decided to confront him. Even though we had barely spoken since I helped with his treatment, I felt like I needed answers, even if they turned out to be painful. I contacted him and asked to meet. The conversation started awkwardly. After all, we hadn't had a close relationship in years. But I didn't want to keep carrying this uncertainty. Finally, after some small talk, I asked the question that had been eating away at me. Why did you always treat me with so Much resentment? Why did I always feel like a stranger in my own family? He went silent for what felt like an eternity. I could see the internal struggle on his face, and at that moment, I knew there was something bigger behind all of this. After what seemed like forever, he let out a deep sigh and confessed, "You're the product of an affair." Those words hit me like a bombshell. Everything inside me froze. I tried to process what I had just heard, but it felt like the world had stopped spinning. He continued, his voice shaking, explaining that my mom had an affair during a rough period in their marriage. When I was born, he always suspected I wasn't his biological child. Over time, he confirmed it. The resentment grew, and it deeply affected how he treated me. He also said he believed my mom resented me for the same reason, even though she never admitted it outright. I didn't know what to do with this information. My dad apologized for all the pain he had caused me, for all the resentment and distance, and for how cruel and unfair he had been. With tears in his eyes, he begged for my forgiveness, admitting he had been a terrible father. But I don't know if I can forgive him. Even with his confession and his apologies, the damage is done. Those scars run deep. I don't know what to do with all of this. My world has been turned upside down, and I'm struggling to put the pieces back together. The only thing I know for sure is that I don't want to see my mom or my half-sister ever again. They've caused too much pain in my life, and I have no interest in reopening those wounds. This will likely be my last update. I have so much to think about, and I'm not in the right headspace to keep sharing my story. What started as something I could laugh about has turned into a nightmare. Thank you for listening. My husband organizes my 36th birthday party to introduce me to his 23-year-old pregnant girlfriend, who he claims is my replacement because I'm defective. However, his plan falls apart when her truth comes to light. My husband, Carl, and I have been married for 8 years. Our story began when I was 28. At the time, I was working as a personal assistant and coping with the loss of my father. Losing a parent leaves you feeling deeply isolated and empty, as anyone who's experienced it knows. Emotionally, I was in a fragile place. Then Carl appeared, a charming older man who seemed to know just what to say to lift my spirits. It was a classic love story at first, and maybe that's why I fell so hard for him. Back then, he was everything I was looking for. Confident, dependable, and caring. We had incredible dates, and he always treated me like a true lady. My mom adored him from the start. When I met his parents, there was some initial tension because we came from different ethnic backgrounds, but over time they grew to love me. His sister, Kai, and I hit it off right away and became incredibly close. We often went shopping or had lunch together, and she became the sister I always wished for but never had. Thanks to Carl, I felt fortunate to have her in my life. Carl and I were still very much in love when he proposed unexpectedly. He surprised me with an engagement party, inviting all our loved ones. Without hesitation, I said yes. I still vividly remember the smiles on our family's faces as they praised how perfect we were for each other. For a long time, I truly believed it too. Our wedding went smoothly, and we spent 2 magical weeks in Mexico for our honeymoon. But reality hit hard when we returned home. Moving into his place was a challenge. He was very particular about his belongings and didn't want me altering his living room or bedroom with my style. I suggested we incorporate my touches gradually, but he had issues with my wardrobe too. He claimed no one in their right mind needed so many clothes. Understanding his concerns, I agreed not to overcrowd his space. Instead, I used the guest room for my wardrobe. But he found a problem even with that. He hated my fridge magnets, a collection I started during my travels, each representing a destination I'd explored. He called them cheap and refused to let me display them. After heated arguments, he convinced me to let it go to avoid starting our marriage on the wrong foot. In the first 2 years, I spent a lot of time with family and friends. Carl, on the other hand, was more of a homebody because of his long work hours. I enjoyed socializing and didn't mind going out alone occasionally. Carl sometimes suggested I stay home, but we still made time for dates twice a week, which I cherished. However, during the 3rd year of our marriage, I noticed a shift in Carl's behavior. When we got married, it was clear that neither of us wanted children. Suddenly, Carl started expressing his desire to become a father, saying he'd love to see me pregnant. I was taken aback and reminded him of our decision not to have kids. He brushed it off, insisting he'd changed his mind and would love to see me with a baby bump. His words made me deeply uncomfortable. He began refusing to use protection, which made me even more afraid that he might try to force me into pregnancy. I had multiple conversations with him, trying to understand his sudden change of heart. Just the year before, he'd said how much he loved our child-free life. Now, he insisted that having a baby would allow me to quit my job, making everything perfect in our marriage. The idea of losing my job terrified me. Knowing he wasn't going to back down, I decided to secretly start taking birth control pills after consulting my gynecologist. Thankfully, it worked and I never got pregnant. Meanwhile, Carl's behavior grew more erratic. He started questioning me about who I spent time with and where I went. He even began commenting on my outfits, which surprised me since I'd always dressed modestly. He suggested I should cover up more, even when I wore something as simple as a t-shirt and jacket. He claimed he was worried about how other men might perceive me. At first, I ignored his remarks, but his comments grew more aggressive, often demanding I change before leaving the house. This made me feel increasingly uncomfortable and insecure about what was happening in our relationship. A few weeks later, I noticed some of my favorite clothes were missing from my closet. At first, I thought I was imagining things and tore through the house searching for them. When I asked Carl, he denied knowing anything. Eventually, I found my clothes stuffed in an empty shoebox in the garage. Furious, I confronted him. Initially, he denied it, but since it was just the two of us in the house, he couldn't avoid responsibility. After some arguing, he admitted he'd hidden my clothes to prevent me from wearing them when I went out with friends. I was horrified and livid. He tried justifying his actions by saying he was protecting my reputation, claiming women who dressed like that were often labeled as promiscuous. Losing my patience, I yelled at him, calling him out for his controlling behavior. I reminded him that we'd been married for years, and I had never been unfaithful. Why did he care so much about what other men thought? I made it clear that no reasonable person would act this way toward their partner. Eventually, he apologized. Since this was the first unusual thing he'd done, I thought maybe he was just going through a phase and decided to let it go. But things continued to escalate. I began noticing that messages from my friends and family were mysteriously disappearing from my phone. For example, if I'd made plans with my mom, our conversation would be gone within days, leaving me confused. At first, I thought it was a technical glitch and updated my phone. But when a friend called to invite me to a small gathering, I agreed and waited for her follow-up text. I never received it. Later, she asked why I hadn't responded, and I told her I hadn't gotten any messages. She showed me on her phone that she had, in fact, sent the invitation. This was deeply unsettling. Convinced my phone had been hacked, I decided to buy a new one. Being sentimental, I kept my old phone, hoping to fix it someday. During all this, I shared these strange incidents with Carl, who seemed just as baffled as I was. The night I brought home my new phone, I didn't think to mention it to him. That same evening, I woke up feeling thirsty and went to the kitchen for water. To my shock, I found Carl hunched over on the couch, holding both my old and new phones. It took a moment for my eyes to adjust, but I realized he was going through my phone. I couldn't hold back my frustration. I asked him loudly what on earth he was doing. Startled, he jumped and began stammering. He accused me of hiding something from him because I had bought a new phone without telling him. He ranted about how I'd betrayed his trust. Standing there in disbelief, I calmly reminded him that he knew I'd been having issues with my old phone and had simply replaced it. I hadn't even set up the new one yet. I asked him again what he was doing with both phones in the middle of the night. He tried to claim he was checking for any issues with my old phone. I snatched my phone from his hands and saw that he'd opened my chats. That's when it hit me. Carl was the one who had been deleting my messages all along. When I confronted him, he denied it vehemently, calling my accusation ridiculous. But I pointed out that I'd caught him red-handed, reading my messages in the dead of night. I demanded to know why he had sabotaged my relationships by deleting texts from my friends and family. He finally admitted it after much pressing. His excuse? He wanted to spend more time with me. I was horrified. How could he justify such a violation of my privacy? I already spent so much time with him. This felt like a betrayal. On so many levels. I packed a bag that night, intending to stay with my mom for a while. Carl begged me not to leave, apologizing and promising he'd change. But I couldn't bring myself to stay. Later, when I shared everything with my mom, she was just as disturbed as I was. Still, she tried to reassure me, saying I should be grateful to have a husband who cared so much, even if his actions were wrong. Her words offered little comfort. Over the next few days, Carl called and texted me incessantly. His messages ranged from apologetic to accusatory, blaming me for his suspicions. At one point, he even threatened to divorce me and leave me with nothing. I turned my phone off and tried to distract myself by helping my mom around the house. But deep down, I knew something was seriously wrong with Carl, and I wasn't sure how to handle it. That's when Carl's sister, came to visit. She was just as shocked and disturbed by what her brother had done. Unlike most people who might side with their family, Kai was fully on my side. She assured me that what I was feeling was valid. No husband should go through his wife's phone in the middle of the night, especially when I had given him no reason to doubt me. She promised to talk to Carl and find out what was really going on. Feeling a bit better after our conversation, I turned my phone back on. Immediately, I was bombarded with angry texts from Colonel. He sounded like a completely different person. In one message, he even compared me to my late father, saying he would abandon me the same way. 2 days later, Kai called with news she knew I wouldn't want to hear. When she arrived, she showed me photos on her phone. In them, a young blonde woman was entering my house. My heart sank. Kai explained that she had been watching Carl's place for the past 2 days and had seen this woman coming and going. She suspected her brother was having an affair. Couldn't breathe. My body trembled as I tried to process what I was seeing and hearing. Kai tried to comfort me, but I pushed her away and ran to the bathroom, where I broke down. Everything felt like it was spinning out of control. How could this be happening? When I returned, Kai and my mom were waiting, both looking deeply concerned. I tried to brush it off, suggesting the woman could be a housekeeper or coworker. But the more I spoke, the more I saw their pitying expressions. It was clear neither of them believed me. Kai assured me she wanted to believe her brother wasn't cheating but said the evidence pointed otherwise. She asked if Carl had contacted me in the past 2 days. When I shook my head, she fell silent. That's when the tears came. I can't describe the pain of realizing your marriage is over. It's a profound, suffocating sadness. My mom and Kai sat with me on the floor, comforting me in their own ways. Once I calmed down a little, my mom said she regretted ever thinking Carl could change. She promised to help me find a divorce lawyer. Kai agreed and offered to investigate the mysterious woman further, which could be useful in my divorce case. I didn't do much after that except curl up in bed, pretending this was all just a bad dream. But like anyone who's been betrayed, I woke up with a heavy chest, the painful realization settling in. The love of my life had cheated on me. Kai had sent me the photos of the woman entering my house. Zooming in, I saw just how young she looked. I couldn't believe that instead of facing our issues, my pathetic husband had chosen to sneak around with someone else. That realization fueled my anger. If Carl thought he could do whatever he wanted and I'd come crawling back, he was in for a rude awakening. I decided to divorce him and take everything I could. My mom and I began researching top divorce attorneys in the area to set up consultations. Kai called frequently to check on me. After meeting with a lawyer, I was told the first step was to hire a private investigator to gather evidence, ensuring I'd get the best outcome in the divorce. Though hiring one was costly, I didn't care as long as Carl learned not to mess with me. During this time, Carl only texted me twice, asking if I was ready to apologize. His arrogance enraged me further, but I resisted the urge to confront him, knowing it might tip him off about the divorce. I wanted to see his face when he received the papers. Carl never bothered coming to my mom's house, convinced his behavior over the phone incident was justified. Meanwhile, my lawyer informed me that the investigator was uncovering substantial evidence. Carl's relationship with this young woman seemed serious. They were meeting daily. This suggested the affair wasn't recent but had likely been going on for a long time. Kai's online digging revealed the woman's identity. Georgina, a 23-year-old with a criminal record. Most shockingly, she was wanted in another state for car thefts linked to a gang she worked for as a teenager. Georgina was currently working as a stripper, which meant she'd likely hidden her past from everyone. Kai and I decided to confront Carl's parents without his knowledge. When we met them, they were blindsided. They hadn't even known we were having marital issues. Carl had lied, claiming everything at home was fine. I shared photos and evidence from the private investigator, leaving them furious and disgusted with their son. Carl's mom hugged me tightly, promising their full support. Together, we planned to confront Carl and catch him off guard. With my birthday approaching, Carl's parents insisted he throw me a big celebration, acting as if they knew nothing about the affair. Carl tried to brush off the idea, claiming I wouldn't want a party, but his dad pressed, pretending I had already agreed. Cornered, Carl reluctantly agreed to the plan. He even sent me a message, pretending to be thoughtful, saying he hoped I'd forgive him and attend the party. I played along, thanking him for the kind gesture and promising to come. On my birthday, I arrived at Carl's house with my mom, armed with divorce papers and evidence from the investigator. The house was a mess, half-heartedly decorated with random gray balloons, dirty dishes piled in the sink, and takeout pizza as the main course. It was almost laughable. When Carl's parents arrived, everyone acted as though nothing was wrong, waiting for the right moment to confront him. Kai showed up with gifts, and we sat down for a strained dinner. After cutting the cake, the doorbell rang. Carl jumped up to answer it, and to everyone's shock, he walked back and holding Georgina's hand. She was dressed in a flashy outfit, complete with towering heels. Ignoring me completely, Carl introduced her to his parents, declaring he had an announcement to make. He began rambling about how he'd been unhappy in our marriage for a long time, claiming I had emotionally mistreated him and never cared about his feelings. He accused me of cheating after discovering my second phone and painted himself as the victim. Then, with dramatic flair, he announced that Georgina was pregnant with his child, 2 months along. The room fell silent as his words sunk in. My eyes widened in shock. I wasn't prepared for this revelation. I glanced at Kai, who looked just as stunned. Carl continued, saying I had failed him as a wife, but he was grateful to have found Georgina. My mother, who had clearly been trying to contain her anger until this moment, finally let her intrusive thoughts take over. She stood up from her chair and threw an entire glass of Sprite at Carl's face, shouting how despicable he was. Carl looked surprised, while Georgina appeared terrified. Then Keely shouted at Carl that his game was over, and we all knew he'd been having an affair with this woman. She continued telling him everything she had discovered about Georgina, including the fact that she was being sought in another state for car theft. I can't describe how satisfying it was to see my husband lose all color in his face and begin to panic. I knew then that this was my perfect opportunity to serve him the divorce papers. I took the papers out of my coat and walked over to the table to hand them to him triumphantly. I told him that I was ready, and now that he had publicly admitted to having an affair, I was going for everything he owned. My mother and I excused ourselves while we watched his parents and Keely continue yelling at him. I was fed up with him and his drama, and I had no intention of staying there any longer. During the whole car ride, my mother kept telling me how proud she was of raising such a strong woman like me. I have no idea what Keely and his parents said to him, but it must have been bad because he kept calling me and sending messages begging me to talk. I woke up this morning to almost 80 messages where Carl was pleading for me to come back to him and promising that he would change. He says,